Chapter 1532. In the next few days, Li Zhongjiu also cultivated normally. Qi Yanran took the soaring pill given by Li Zhongjiu, and her cultivation improved greatly. The effect of this pill was too strong for ordinary people to bear. Only experts of this realm could completely absorb and digest the effect of this pill. Otherwise, it would be a waste to give it to others. It might even be life-threatening. Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yanran also went back to Wuxia City. In Wuxia City, they also had a happy meal together. Since they were back, they might as well stay in Wuxia City for a while. In the blink of an eye, half a year passed. Li Zhongjiu's cultivation had reached the bottleneck of innate level 2. He didn't know how long it would take for him to break through to innate level 3. Therefore, Li Zhongjiu also prepared to do some other things. He personally came to the Untainted Land. He found the teleportation array from back then and rearranged it. After sending a few primordial stones into it, Li Zhongjiu was directly teleported to the sacred martial realm. In the Great Yin Imperial Palace where Chu Yingguan was. When he felt Li Zhongjiu's teleportation formation moving, he hurriedly brought people to investigate. He didn't expect it to be Li Zhongjiu, Evil Lord Senior. When he saw Li Zhongjiu appear, Chu Yingguan was very happy. After all, Li Zhongjiu had made so many contributions to them and saved the entire sacred martial realm. He was very touched and respected. Before he could repay him properly, Li Zhongjiu directly opened the teleportation formation and flew away. They were at a loss as to what to do. After Li Zhongjiu came back, he didn't say much. Instead, he asked Chu Yingguan to help him find a person. It was the old man who sold the Luban locks in Jinchang City. At that time, Li Zhongjiu didn't expect that he would be so lucky to meet the person who designed Jinchang City. Now that he appeared, of course, he had to invite this master. Chu Yingguan and Xiaolin naturally found the old man very quickly. Gongsun Li. Li Zhongjiu had been away for almost a year. When he saw Li Zhongjiu again, Gongsun Li felt a sense of loss. At that time, I thought you were just saying it casually. I didn't expect it to be true. When Gongsun Li saw Li Zhongjiu, he was also in a trance, as if he was in a dream. He was very excited about Li Zhongjiu's appearance. Although Li Zhongjiu might have just mentioned it casually back then, Gongsun Li had really remembered it. He thought that Li Zhongjiu had forgotten about it, but now he suddenly came looking for him. I'm here to take you to a place. It's a long trip. If you have anything to tell me or to prepare, you can do it. I'll give you 2 days. It's okay. This old man is all alone. I can leave at any time, Gongsun Li said. Li Zhongjiu immediately nodded. Okay, then let's go. The teleportation formation here has been stabilized. I will come here often in the future. The last sentence was said to Chu Yingguan. Won't Evil Lord stay for a few more days? No need. Chu Yingguan also wanted to talk to Li Zhongjiu about something. But since Li Zhongjiu left in such a hurry, he might have other things to do. In this case, Chu Yingguan didn't force him to stay. What's more, Li Zhongjiu said that he would come here often, so he waited for the time being. After all, the matter wasn't very serious. Li Zhongjiu directly took Gongsun Li through the teleportation formation and returned to the Shengwu continent. When Gongsun Li arrived at the Shengwu continent, he was very surprised. Although there were such legends in the past, they were still quite shocked when they saw the other side of the continent. But at least he could accept it. This is the Wuxia City, but my request this time is a little different. Li Zhongjiu brought him to the Wuxia City. The people around also introduced Gongsun Li to them. Qi Yanran was learning to cook from Shenshi recently. Li Tianqing and many other people, including Nangong Wuji, were also here. After all, the White Deer Mansion was designed by him, so he was very experienced in this aspect. After greeting them, Li Zhongjiu also brought him to the Fog Snow Alchemy sect. Looking at the Wuxia City from the Fog Snow Alchemy sect's direction, they could see the situation of the Wuxia City. Lord, what's your request? I want the whole mountain to float like the Jinchang City, Li Zhongjiu said. In the Shengwu realm, the Jinchang City was just a city in the sky. But after seeing the Dragon Island, Li Zhongjiu also had a sudden idea. If he directly supported the Wuxia mountain, it would definitely have a very good effect. Of course, this project could be said to be quite big. Ordinary people didn't dare to imagine. Maybe it was just imagination, but they definitely didn't dare to imagine that he would really appear. The whole mountain will float? Nangong Wuji could say that it was impossible to make the whole city float above the ground. But now, he actually wanted to make the whole mountain float. This was too exaggerated. This, how is this possible? Nangong Wuji kept saying impossible, and shook his head crazily. How could such a thing happen? He had never seen it before. Li Zhongjiu didn't take Nangong Wuji to the Dragon Island to have a look. When he took Nangong Wuji to have a look, he knew how narrow his vision was. However, Gong Sunli didn't directly shake his head to deny it. Instead, he was seriously considering it. Actually, the difficulty of making a mountain float in the air is much lower than making a city float in the air. What we need to specifically consider now is to have enough power. And we also need a force to stabilize the entire mountain. Gong Sunli said. As for how to do it, I don't care. I don't understand. I'll leave it to you. If you need anything, you can find him. Li Zhongjiu said. Of course, he didn't need to worry about this matter anymore. My father will do his best to help. If you can't find me, you can find my father. No problem. Gong Sunli seemed to be put in an important position. In such a situation, he had to work harder. Otherwise, he wouldn't be worthy of Evil Lord's trust. At first, Nangong Wuji didn't believe Gong Sunli very much. He even thought that Gong Sunli was an old liar. But in several seminars later, Gong Sunli learned something new. Some of the knowledge and opinions Gong Sunli shared were very useful to Nangong Wuji. Immediately, Nangong Wuji knew that he had met an expert. Gong Sunli's ideas were too advanced. He didn't know where Gong Sunli came from. How could he have so many wonderful ideas? First of all, Gong Sunli proposed the origin energy thruster. As long as this thing was produced, it would be able to push things off the ground with a pushing force. Now some airships, flying boats, and warships were also using this thing. But Nangong Wuji had never had such an idea. Just by imagining it, he felt that it was a little exciting. Then these people directly threw themselves into the crazy research. Under the organization of Li Tianqing, Li Tianqing directly established a Heaven City project. And these people were directly appointed as members of the Heaven City Project Research Institute. With the title, it was obvious that they would have more backbone when it came to work. Their strength was activated. Li Tianqing also constantly recruited people with different professional abilities on this continent. As long as they could be of use, he would directly transfer them. Suddenly, the situation of Wuxia City became a very important point of attention for the major forces. Almost the entire continent focused their attention on this place. They wanted to see if this Heaven City could be built. In addition to cultivation, Li Zhongjiu often went to the Heaven Sect Academy to investigate. At this moment in the sacred martial realm, in front of Chu Yingguan, was a group of civil officials and military generals. Jiangbai was among them. They were all Chu Yingguan's confidants. At this moment, they seemed to be waiting for something, and kept looking outside the door. Chapter 1533. Finally, a figure landed on the ground. It was a young man with a long ruler in his hand. Boom! After landing on the ground, he didn't seem to be able to control his strength well, and created 2 deep craters on the ground. How are you? Jiangbai hurriedly stepped forward and helped Fu Ding up. The latter looked rather miserable. They're too strong. Fu Ding was in a mess. The battle a few nights ago had really left Fu Ding in dire straits. Moreover, his opponent's strength was beyond his imagination. They were much stronger than him. Therefore, he was no match for them. It was all thanks to the demon-suppressing ruler that Lin Fan was able to make it back alive. Otherwise, he would have died right there and then. These ape men are too strong. We can't underestimate them. Now half of the primordial beasts in the 100,000 mountains are under their command. Moreover, these ape men seem to be more intelligent than us. They've declared that they're going to build a primordial beast empire. Fu Ding told them all the news that he had obtained today. However, everyone was in disbelief. These ape men were too bold and crazy. They actually declared that they were going to build a primordial beast empire. Are you kidding me? A group of beasts without intelligence actually wanted to build an empire? These ape men are very strange. They're good at using weapons, but they're also good at fighting. They learn things very quickly. They've even learned how to speak. A civil official said. This person had been paying attention to the ape race for a long time. After all, the appearance of the ape race was too abnormal. As for why they would appear in the 100,000 mountain range, it was also surprising. He was extremely puzzled. It was impossible to investigate. The ape men were like a plague. They came with great momentum. How long had it been since they started to build a primordial beast empire? Senior brother Fu Ding, please go to the sacred mountain and tell them about the situation here. The sacred mountain also took action in the fallen beast divine temple incident. Their performance was not bad. Although they were a little cowardly in the beginning, at least they had lost a lot of people. Moreover, Kuanping Heavenly Saint and Li Zongjio had a good relationship. Although there were 2 heaven saints in the Great Yin Kingdom, who would be willing to take out their trump cards unless it was a crisis. Alright, this matter is very serious. We can't afford to delay it. Fu Ding didn't rest that night. He quickly rushed to the sacred mountain and conveyed the news of the ape clan in the 100,000 mountains. If the heavenly sage Kuan-Peng were to hear about the ape race, he would definitely break down on the spot. This was because he had just sent away the fallen race, and in the blink of an eye, another ape race had appeared. Wasn't this giving him, heavenly sage Kuan-Peng, something to do? Heavenly sage Kuan-Peng wanted to cry but had no tears. He just wanted to cultivate properly. Why did people come out every day and force him to fight with his life on the line? Originally, when he saw Li Zongjio last time, he was going to tell Li Zongjio about this matter. After all, it was not a small matter, and it was a very abnormal situation. However, the matter at that time hadn't reached a very serious situation, so he held back. Li Zongjio also had his own things to do. He couldn't go to Li Zongjio every time there was a disturbance. Chu Yanguan was Qi Yinran's disciple. Fu Ding was Li Zongjio's disciple. Therefore, the two of them also called each other senior and junior brother. Whether it was in age or the time when they entered the sect, Chu Yanguan was older. Although she wasn't as strong as Fu Ding, she still had a lot of say in this regard. Fu Ding's thoughts were more simple and direct. Therefore, he listened to Chu Yanguan's instructions. What's more, when Li Zongjio left, he also said that he should listen to Chu Yanguan's instructions. The ape clan was secretly developing in the 100,000 mountains. No one knew what would happen in the end. Tonight, Fu Ding also went to find out the situation of the other party. Unexpectedly, he fought with the guards of the ape clan and retreated. After all, it was Li Zongjio's disciple. It wasn't so easy to take down Fu Ding. Only then did he have the chance to come back and report. The other major countries also already knew, but they didn't take any action first. Because the closest to the 100,000 mountains now was the Great Yin. Everything could wait until the Great Yin was in trouble, then slowly prepare. Therefore, this matter was just like that. Now, they were watching from the side, and were not in a hurry to take action. Xingwu Continent. Luoxia City had been reinforced by the formation. Now the origin energy thruster had been manufactured. It was already the 2nd year. In the first year of the experiment, thousands of failures had occurred. It could be said that Gongsun Li had experienced countless failures. After all, it was the entire Gongsun family who was creating it. However, when it came to him, he was basically the only one who insisted on this career. As for the other members of the Gongsun family, they had already turned their attention to other projects, so they didn't pay much attention to it. Therefore, in the entire Gongsun family, only he knew the technology of Sky City. Fortunately, he was already halfway to success. When the origin energy thruster was created, Nangong Wuji's inspiration completely exploded. In the process, he even worshipped Gongsun Li as his master. If it weren't for Nangong Wuji's talent, Gongsun Li wouldn't have agreed to Nangong Wuji's request. After all, Nangong Wuji was indeed a little old. But fortunately, Nangong Wuji's passion for learning seemed to be more than the cultivation of origin energy. The first origin energy thruster appeared. Soon, a new batch of origin energy thrusters appeared. Later, the entire Fog Snow Alchemy sect became the research place of Gongsun Li and the others. In the blink of an eye, another 2 years had passed. The first batch of 5,000 origin energy thrusters had been manufactured and put into the experiment. 2 years had passed. The experiment was carried out on a small mountain. When Li Tianqing found out about it, he immediately found a mountain peak outside. Then with a slash of his sword he chopped down the mountain peak. The diameter alone was more than 1,500 feet. The diameter of the Sunset Peak was 1,500 feet. This was the place that was going to be flattened. From this position the Sunset Peak would be sent to the sky. Now the stairway to heaven had begun to be excavated. It was on the 4 sides of the mountain that these connected stairs were built. It was as if they were climbing a mountain. This 150 feet tall mountain was still hovering 1,000 meters above the ground. Every day when the researchers woke up, the first thing they did was to check if the floating mountain had fallen. This lasted for 2 whole years. It's a success. The current 3rd generation Origin Energy Thruster is the most stable one. Each Origin Energy Thruster is independent. Even if one of them has a problem, it can be replaced at any time. The 1,500-foot tall mountain required 5,000 Origin Energy Thrusters. In that case, a total of 100,000 Origin Energy Thrusters would be needed to travel a distance of 1,500 feet. This was because the height and weight of the Origin Energy Thrusters were different. The White Deer Mansion probably didn't expect this project to be so expensive. Fortunately, Li Zongjiu wasn't short of money at all. At the same time, the White Deer Mansion had sealed up this technology. If you wanted to use it, you had to buy it from the White Deer Mansion. The dealership was also given to Song Jiyu. It was another big project. The dealership of the Origin Energy Thruster alone made Song Jiyu the richest person in the Xingyan dynasty. Of course, the White Deer Mansion was an exception. Whether it was a flying boat, a battleship, or even some Origin Energy weapons, the thruster was extremely valuable. In addition, the White Deer Mansion said that even if you didn't use it for the time being, you had to buy it and store it. Anyway, you had to pay for it. When Gong Sunli announced this news, the entire research institute was in an uproar. The stability of the 3rd generation thruster meant that they could move on to the next step. The Sky City Research Institute's research was still ongoing. Li Zongjiu didn't care about this good news. He would tell him when the Sunset Peak was sent to the sky. At this moment, Li Zongjiu and Qi Yanran had received an official invitation to come to Qingkuan Sacred City to participate in the national school competition. The first competition. Chapter 1534. Since it was the first competition, of course the Tianzong Academy had to pay great attention to it. It had been 5 years since the establishment of the Tianzong Academy. Finally, the first competition had arrived. In the Tianzong Academy, the total academic year was a total of 9 years. If you were talented enough, you didn't even need to pay any tuition fees during these 9 years. If you were hardworking enough, you could get the first place in your department at the end of every semester. You could even get a lot of rewards. Not only did you not need to spend money, but you could also earn money. As long as you were talented enough and hardworking enough, you would have countless opportunities to earn money in the Tianzong Academy. Now in the Shengwu continent, there were many top academies. The most famous one was naturally the Tianzong Academy, but the Four Seas Academy, the Royal Academy, and the Heavenly Star Medicine Manor, all of them possessed considerable strength. However, the Purple Pill Academy was gradually heading towards decline. This was also an inevitable result, because there wasn't much power behind it to support it. In addition, alchemy masters were gradually appearing, and their standards had improved greatly. If the Purple Pill Academy didn't have the help of the Heavenly Pill Pavilion, it would have been gone long ago. Isn't this Azure Ocean Academy very powerful? I remember this academy was also very famous in the past. Qingkuan Sacred City. A man and a woman dressed in ordinary clothes were walking on the street. The man was holding a paper bag in his hand, and the paper bag was filled with snacks. The woman was holding a big cotton candy in her hand. This cotton candy was directly made into the shape of a rabbit. Different colored syrups were used to decorate the rabbit's expression, and it looked very cute. However, the woman holding the cotton candy looked pure and refined. At first glance, one might not notice her, But even a slight glance was enough to leave an indelible impression in one's mind. The Academy Master of the Azure Ocean Academy was killed by me. Do you think the Azure Ocean Academy can continue to operate? Li Zhongjiu couldn't help but say. These words didn't sound like a joke. Killed? When did this happen? Qi Yanran was also surprised. Then she took a bite of the cotton candy. Even the coldest girl would not be able to resist the temptation when she saw the cotton candy, and would buy one to eat. The Azure Ocean Academy was founded by the devouring Yuan clan. When you were injured, you dragged them out. Naturally, you can't let them go. These people from the devouring Yuan clan want to learn the abilities of the human race, to deal with the human race. They have ulterior motives. Li Zhongjiu held a big bag of snacks in his arms. These were the things that Qi Yanran would eat when she watched the game later. It seemed that after that inheritance, Qi Yanran had gradually turned on her foodie mode. She liked to try these fresh little delicacies, and her mouth often couldn't stop. Fortunately, Li Zhongjiu had a lot of money in his pocket, so the food didn't cost much. What about the current Pine Tree Academy? Pine Tree Academy was an academy that had just emerged 2 years ago, and this academy was also very formidable. It actually had the support of an untainted land sect. Therefore, Pine Tree Academy had quickly become one of the top academies. Li Zhongjiu didn't refuse. There must be many hidden sects in the untainted land, but Li Zhongjiu didn't have time to pay attention to them. If he opened more academies, it would be of great help to the young people on this continent. It was impossible to open academies and then keep suppressing others. This method was too despicable for Li Zhongjiu. However, he heard that Pine Tree Academy was aggressive and seemed to want to compete with Tianzong Academy. Of course, there were other top academies, but they were not listed one by one. After all, this was an era of talents. Young Master Gua, what do you think of that girl? Among the crowd, there were several well-dressed young men gathered together. At the same time, they looked at Qi Yanran with a very presumptuous look. Although Qi Yanran had reached the state of returning to her natural state, and her aura was restrained, her temperament was irresistible. Qi Yanran, who seemed to be ordinary, was targeted by people at first glance. No matter when, there was no shortage of such playboys. The man called Young Master Gua also looked over. When he saw Qi Yanran for the first time, his eyes widened. I even thought of the name of my future child. Immediately, Young Master Gua waved his hand and led his brothers to break through the crowd. He came in front of Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yanran. They surrounded the two of them. There were 8 people in the other party. Sister, you're not a local, right? Guorenjia came in front of Qi Yanran and paced back and forth. He also kept looking at Qi Yanran in front of him. As for Li Zhongjiu, who was holding a pile of food, he was naturally ignored. At least in the eyes of others, Li Zhongjiu should be just a bodyguard. Are you flirting with me? Qi Yanran looked at the playboy in front of her. They were usually cultivating, so they rarely went out. Moreover, they were either in the Sacred Flame Royal City or the Sunset City. As the local residents, they basically knew the couple. After all, the two of them often went out to the market to buy vegetables. At first it was very strange, but later it was not strange. This was Heaven and Earth Sacred City. It was a place where imperial power resided. For Li Zhongjiu, who was extremely unreliable, the imperial tutor, it was deliberately weakened. No one would believe that the dignified imperial tutor and the imperial tutor's wife were walking on the street like ordinary people. No matter how you looked at it, the two of them were just ordinary people. Even if some rich young ladies deliberately dressed up, their clothes could be changed. Sometimes, they would inadvertently reveal some jewelry, even the hairpin on their head. Any one of them would be priceless. Guorenjia had looked at it carefully just now. There was nothing valuable on Qi Yanran's body. She only had 2 yuan or 3 yuan. Moreover, she was eating very cheap cotton candy. How could a young lady from a rich family eat such things? Moreover, Guorenjia often walked on this street, so he could see clearly what kind of woman she was and what kind of situation she was in. He did not expect to meet such a high-quality goods on the street today. Sister, you're quite proactive. Don't worry, your brother Gua is a good person. I happen to have 2 tickets for the National School Tournament, first-class seats. You're here to watch the tournament, right? Not everyone can get first-class seats. Guorenjia said confidently. Oh, you happen to have 2 tickets? Qi Yanran looked at Guorenjia and asked. Yes, I don't know if sister can do me the honor? Guorenjia said. Why don't you give us both tickets? Li Zongjiu said at this time. It interrupted Guorenjia's beautiful fantasy. Chapter 1535. When Guorenjia heard Li Zongjiu's words, his face darkened. How dare you? Can't you see that our masters are talking? How dare you interrupt as a mere follower? If you are a member of my Guo family, I will pull out all your teeth today, Guorenjia said fiercely. Such a small follower would not dare to make trouble after being scared. Why don't you take a look at your status? First-class seats are second only to VIP seats. Just this ticket alone costs at least 500,000 purple yuan. Have you seen more than 100,000 purple yuan with your poor appearance? The followers at the side also joined in, wanting to use this method to boost Guorenjia's prestige. Guorenjia smiled viciously. These brothers of his were indeed very loyal. Your surname is Guo? Qi Yanran looked at Guorenjia in front of her with a surprised look. Guorenjia said proudly. That's right, master. Yes, I am Guorenjia. Let me tell you a secret. The current governor of the 2 armies of the Xingyan dynasty, Guo Longquan, is my father. Guorenjia said. There was also a proud expression on his face. Governor of 2 armies. This status was not simple. In recent years, there were often some disturbances. In addition, they had to oversee and deal with the Abyss tribe. Therefore, many people who had outstanding military achievements were directly promoted. For example, this Guo Longquan also appeared 2 years ago. He had accumulated enough military achievements to directly become the governor of 2 armies, leading 100,000 troops. It could be said that he was in high spirits. Most importantly, this Guo Longquan was also the person who was supported by the current Emperor Xingyan personally. It was said that they had cooperated in the past. When the city of chaos was suppressed, it was this Guo Longquan who helped. It was indeed very normal to bring him out and train him well. Guorenjia had such a father. In Qingkuan's sacred city, as long as you did not offend the emperor's sister, you would be fine. As long as you did not offend Emperor Xingyan, his father would appear and settle any problems. After all, Emperor Xingyan was only 23 years old now, and he did not even have an empress. Not to mention children. Of course, Guorenjia had no chance to offend Emperor Xingyan. Therefore, there was nothing to be afraid of in this city. Naturally, he could get whatever he wanted. If that's the case, aren't you afraid that his status will make your father kneel? Qi Yanran couldn't help but say. At the same time, she looked at Guorenjia with a puzzled look. At present, the strength of Li Zongjiu and his wife had reached the peak of perfection. There was nothing in the world that could hurt them, unless there was an expert of the celestial realm. In that case, they had to be careful. However, there were still many people who did not have the same strength as them. Therefore, there would always be people who would bully the weak. If he hadn't met them, he naturally wouldn't have seen them. But since he had met them today, he naturally had to intervene. After all, Qi Yanran's current realm was also different. She was quite disgusted with this kind of person. It was unknown how many good girls had been harmed by such a playboy. Guorenjia and the others heard Qi Yanran's words. At first, they were stunned. Then, they looked carefully at Li Zongjiu, trying to find something unusual about Li Zongjiu. However, no matter how they looked, Li Zongjiu was just a follower. Ha ha ha, little sister, are you scared out of your wits? This poor young man wants my father to kneel? Do you know that your words not only hurt him, but also hurt yourself? Guorenjia's eyes gradually became cold. Then, he looked at Qi Yanran in front of him. He waved his hand. Guards, these 2 people slandered the officials of the imperial court in the street. Take them down and send them directly to the celestial prison. This was also a method that Guorenjia often used. No matter who you were, as long as you were caught in the celestial prison, you would become very obedient. Even if you had a bad temper, you had to put it away when you were in the celestial prison. And it was one of Guorenjia's privileges to send people to the celestial prison. Because Guorenjia was the inspector of the celestial prison, it could be considered a good position. There was a lot of money in the celestial prison, so Guorenjia's life was quite comfortable. Isn't it just the celestial prison? I'll go with you. You don't have to do anything, Li Zongjie said. If he didn't do anything, he would be protecting these people. After all, although these young people helped the tyrant, they were still children and could be taught. After they were locked in the celestial prison, they would be well behaved after a good beating. There was nothing to worry about. Hearing that Li Zongjie was actually so obedient, Guorenjia and the others were also a little surprised. Under normal circumstances, who didn't want to die? There were even some who resisted arrest. In that case, even if you were really innocent, it would be even more difficult to clear your name now. Since he was willing to go with them, they would directly take him away and see what kind of ability these people had. In the celestial prison, even if you were a dragon, you had to coil up. Guorenjia had this kind of confidence. Under the lead of Guorenjia and the others, Li Zongjie and Qi Yanran also came in front of the celestial prison. My lord, these two are? When the guards in charge of the prison saw Guorenjia and his men, they couldn't help but stare blankly. At the same time, they looked at each other. Something big was happening in the city. Usually, when something good happened, they didn't like to see this kind of situation. Why did you have to choose this time? Moreover, these two people weren't simple at first glance. Although they didn't dress well, their temperament was very good. They made people not dare to look directly at them. These two guards of the celestial prison had some experience. These two people insulted my father on the street. Lock them up and beat them up. See if they are spies sent by the neighboring countries to deliberately discredit my father. Guorenjia said. The two prison guards hesitated. Take this man down and beat him. As for this woman, I want to interrogate her personally. Guorenjia said. He had long been accustomed to doing some things in this exclusive prison cell. Moreover, it really had a different flavor. Is this the place where you flaunt your power and harm the people? Asked the most powerful person in the celestial prison to come out. Qi Yanran glanced at the celestial prison. There was an extremely strong resentment inside. How many people were directly arrested under the circumstances of being wrongly accused? Flaunt my power? Ha ha ha, little sister, it's your first day out. Today, your brother Guo will tell you what is called the sinister world. Tie them up. Chapter 1536. Li Zongjie was directly tied up by the other party. After all, Li Zongjie didn't resist much. Guorenjia saw Li Zongjie obediently submit and sneered. He thought that Li Zongjie had some kind of earth-shattering move, or some kind of unknown identity that would make people's jaws drop. But now it seems that he was just a piece of trash. Guorenjia didn't know how many of these kinds of people who only knew how to talk. It would be interesting if they were caught and thrown into prison. Are you sure you won't regret it? Li Zongjie looked at Guorenjia and said. The current Li Zongjie had already seen too much of the vicissitudes of life. In fact, Li Zongjie didn't want to bother with these ants. When he was young and impetuous, he directly attacked when he didn't like the situation. But now it was different. Li Zongjie didn't want to attack anymore. He just wanted the latter to realize his mistake. But from the current situation, the latter didn't seem to realize it at all. Regret? Ahaha. I've never known how to write the word regret in my entire life. Guorenjia laughed. Obviously, in his eyes, Li Zongjie was almost an idiot. However, before Guorenjia had time to send people to escort Li Zongjie to the prison, a group of people came from afar. How dare you? It was the commander of the Vermilion Bird Army, Sumo. When Emperor Xingyan knew that Li Zongjie and his wife had come to Qingquan Sacred City, he had already sent people to welcome them. He even personally waited outside the competition hall. If it was someone else, it wouldn't be so troublesome. Even if you were a teacher, you wouldn't be treated so well. But Li Zongjie couldn't be judged by common sense. Emperor Xingyan had been on the throne for so many years, and he knew very well why he could sit on the throne so peacefully. It was because he did his best for the people. And at the same time, he never provoked the Li family. They even gave the Li family extremely generous treatment. They never dared to look down on anyone from the Li family. That was why he was able to sit firmly on the throne. Even the Li family had broken the law. He never cared about it. It was always a special way to deal with it. If a member of the Li family made a mistake, of course, it would be the Li family's fault. Outsiders would not dare to interfere. No one dared to offend the Li family. Of course, the Li family itself had done a very good job, and had never overstepped their authority. As the saying goes, well water does not interfere with river water. This point was also worthy of being imitated by the other clans. If the Li family took the lead in rebelling, the entire Xingyan dynasty might really change hands. However, Suemo didn't receive any news related to Li Zhongjiu entering the city. Suemo immediately knew that Li Zhongjiu was very likely to have entered the city. According to the usual routine, he would often encounter all kinds of troublesome things. Therefore, Suemo also asked people to pay close attention to the big and small affairs in the city. Sure enough, he found Guorenjia immediately. Therefore, he hurriedly brought people over, and at the same time, he also asked people to bring Guolongquan over. Of all things, he had to offend Li Zhongjiu. Now this matter wouldn't be so easy to solve. General Su, what do you mean by this? When did the Imperial Guards manage the Heavenly Army's heavenly prison? Could it be that General Su wants to seize power? Guorenjia had been drooling over Suemo for a long time. However, the latter's identity wasn't simple, and his strength wasn't simple either. Basically, he was someone that Guorenjia couldn't obtain no matter how hard he tried. However, the more it was like this, the more Guorenjia wanted to obtain him. Could it be that the heavens were really helping him today? Could it be that happiness had come too suddenly? Now that he finally had the chance to talk to Suemo, he would definitely have to grind it out for a while. If it was anyone else, they would naturally be frightened by the name of the Vermilion Bird Army. However, Guorenjia wasn't afraid, because his father really did have the newest Green Dragon Army in his hands. Of the two armies, one of them was the Azure Dragon Army, which was feared by everyone. When the Hua family's power was gradually weakened, Guolongquan took advantage of the situation. With Emperor Xingyan's support and favor, he was finally able to sit firmly in the first position of the Green Dragon Army. If it was anyone else, they might be frightened by Sumo's identity. Unfortunately, in Guorenjia's eyes, it was nothing at all. General, you've come at the right time. This person claims to be the owner of the heavenly prison. In this city, he can imprison whoever he wants. Is there any reason for that? Qi Yanran and Suemo naturally knew each other. During the meeting of the three dynasties, Qi Yanran was very familiar with Suemo. Moreover, Suemo was also Li Zhongjiu's good friend. Suemo wanted to directly salute Li Zhongjiu. However, Li Zhongjiu gently shook his head at him. Suemo immediately understood. He wanted to properly clean up the family. Detoxifying the poison in Qingquan's sacred city wasn't a bad thing. Suemo was also very clear about Guorenjia's notoriety. What's going on? Tell me. Suemo looked at Guorenjia in front of him, and gave him a chance to speak. Anyway, this guy wouldn't be alive for too long. What do you mean what's going on? General Su, listen to my advice. Although the heavenly prison belongs to the Ministry of War, it has always been under the command of the Great Emperor. Those who are imprisoned here are likely to be rebels. Could it be that General Su wants to interfere and take away these two criminals who are plotting against the dynasty? Guorenjia saw that the situation wasn't right. If he didn't put a big hat on Suemo, he probably wouldn't be able to control this woman. Originally, Suemo was the leader of the Imperial Guards. He should be the most trusted subordinate of the Sacred Flame Great Emperor. However, Suemo often dared to speak bluntly. Sometimes, he even dared to openly disobey the Sacred Flame Great Emperor's order. This made people puzzled. What exactly did Suemo rely on to be so rampant? You didn't answer my question, and put a hat on my head. Slap him. Suemo looked at Guorenjia and said indifferently. First, he would beat Guorenjia up, and let Li Zhongjiu vent his anger. Two Vermilion Bird soldiers immediately stepped forward. One of them pierced through Guorenjia's hands with his spear, and locked them behind his back. The other person stepped forward and slapped him. Slap. Instantly, two front teeth flew out along with fresh blood. When the heavenly prison guards saw that their lord was beaten, they naturally let out a series of gongs and drums. A large group of heavenly prison guards immediately surrounded the Vermilion Bird soldiers. After all, it was the Vermilion Bird soldiers who attacked first. Everyone belonged to different systems. Although they were all soldiers, they were under different orders. Naturally, there was no need to be polite. "Suemo, how dare you slap me?" Blood flowed out of Guorenjia's mouth. "Release the Lord Inspector." When the heavenly prison guards saw that the other party was the Vermilion Bird soldiers, they immediately cursed in their hearts. This Guorenjia really knows how to provoke. Is he fucking blind? Since the Vermilion Bird soldiers had personally appeared, how could they not see that Li Zongjio and Sumo's identities were definitely not ordinary? However, they couldn't get off the tiger now. After all, the heavenly prison couldn't lose face. Although the Vermilion Bird soldiers had a high position in the Imperial Guards, they were only responsible for the safety of the Imperial Palace. They didn't care about the heavenly prison. Chapter 1537. These people didn't know Li Zongjio's identity, but Suemo did. However, Li Zongjio was hinting to Suemo not to expose his identity. These people who didn't know what was good for them were used to doing evil in the holy city. Now they couldn't change their ways. They didn't even know who they had offended, yet they were still stubbornly persisting. "Kill him. Suemo is abusing his power. Take him down. If anything happens, I'll take responsibility." Guorenjia roared loudly. 2 of his teeth were knocked away by the ladder. Moreover, it was in front of so many people. If he didn't take down Suemo and get back his face, where would he put his face? Moreover, there were so many subordinates watching from the side. Did Guorenjia not care about his face? "Guorenjia, you better confess the crimes you committed. Otherwise, even your father won't be able to save you." Suemo shook his head. He said indifferently. At the same time, he didn't put the prison guards in his eyes at all. It was one thing for these weak soldiers to only lock up a few prisoners, but they actually wanted to fight against the Vermilion Bird army. They were simply overestimating their own abilities. Therefore, they didn't put him in their eyes at all. "General Su, this might be a misunderstanding. Why don't we sit down and talk things out? Don't make things difficult for this little one." The prison guard captain hesitated for a moment before speaking. In the current situation, they obviously couldn't fight with the people in front of them. They obviously weren't a match for these women, but the inspector was in the other party's hands. How troublesome. Behind Guorenjia was Governor Guolongquan. This wasn't a joke. "General Su, you also know that Governor Guo's temper isn't very good. Why don't we talk things out and turn big things into small things, and small things into nothing?" The other side also had a brain. A mere Guorenjia wouldn't fight with Suemo because of this. After all, the other side was a true Vermilion Bird army. Any 2 of these people would be able to beat the dozens of people in front of them to the ground. This was why this person didn't want to fight with Suemo. "Alright, I've already sent someone to invite Governor Guolongquan over. Today's matter is not something you can interfere in. Hurry up and leave," Suemo said. This sentence was also full of vigor, scaring the people in front of him into taking a step back. As for the prison guard commander, he quickly sent someone to inform Guolongquan. Now that Guorenjia was in the hands of the Vermilion Bird army, he was a tough nut to crack. However, the main reason for all of this seemed to be the man and woman in front of him. If they weren't here, this situation wouldn't have happened at all. Moreover, even in the face of such a situation where 2 armies were confronting each other, he still appeared to be at ease. Li Zongjio and Yi Qingyu also wanted to see how ridiculous the situation would be if no one intervened. No matter what, they absolutely could not allow such a situation to happen again. Such a huge heaven and earth sacred city actually allowed such a brat to run amok. There were so many laws and regulations, but they were all nonsense. Soon Guolongquan arrived. However, Guolongquan wasn't summoned by the Vermilion Bird army. It seemed that he had already received the news. Beside Guolongjun, there were also hundreds of personal guards following him. These personal guards were also another army under Guolongquan's control, the Onyx Soul Army. These Black Soul Army's armors were pitch black like ink. Their battle style was to launch surprise attacks in the dark. Furthermore, these people also had a special ability. They were able to see everything clearly in the dark, as if it was daytime. Therefore, when they attacked, it was like the arrival of the Grim Reaper. Moreover, the fighting strength of these Onyx Soul Army was also very strong. It was because of the establishment of this Onyx Soul Army that they were able to resist a large number of abyssal race. This made Guolongquan a great hero. To have today's status, General Su, you're really a powerful official. You're in charge of the internal security of the imperial city, but you actually extended your hand to the imperial prison. If I didn't come today, would you have killed your way into my Gua family and tied me up tomorrow? Guolongquan directly released a tyrannical aura across the air. Primitive Emperor Expert. Moreover, after many years of battles, Guolongquan's body was full of killing intent. Even fierce gods and devils didn't dare to get close to him. Sumo's two subordinates were also forced to retreat by the other party's aura. At the same time, Guorenjia was also taken away by the other party. The leader of the guards heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Guolongquan's arrival. At the very least, it was no longer his turn to intervene in the current situation. He only had to watch from the side. At the same time, the commander was also very confused. What's going on today? None of them gave each other face and were very unyielding. Father, you have to make a decision for your son. When Guorenjia saw that Guolongquan had arrived, how could he still care about Sumo? He immediately cried and made a scene, as if he was extremely wronged. I was originally playing on the streets with a few friends, but I felt that these two people were sneaky, so I went forward to interrogate them. Who knew that the man would actually speak arrogantly, saying that even if you came, you wouldn't be worthy of speaking to him, and would even make you kneel down. How could I let these commoners insult you? I immediately escorted the two of them to the prison. Who knew that I would be stopped by General Sumo when I just arrived at the door? Then, he directly got someone to knock out my teeth. The latter kept crying and complaining, and what he said sounded very reasonable. Under this pitiful crying, he also clearly described the crimes of Li Zongjio and the others. On the contrary, his selfless image made people envious of the latter's eloquence. Guolongquan heard it clearly. Although Guorenjia was definitely hiding a lot of bad things about him, it didn't matter to Guolongquan. After all, he, Guolongquan, had been fighting outside for so many years, protecting the country and making great contributions. What was wrong with his son doing something in this city? If he didn't even have this privilege, who would be willing to risk their lives for the dynasty? Dream on. Therefore, the latter could be said to be very confident in this point. No matter who was right or wrong, as long as the fist was bigger, he would be right. So you're the one who wants me to kneel? Guolongquan walked in front of Li Zongjio, looking at this ordinary-looking young man. At the same time, he suppressed Li Zongjio with an obscure aura. Ordinary people would definitely not be able to withstand such suppression. Since you want me to kneel down, then kneel in front of me first. I'll let you see who's the one who has to kneel down. Chapter 1538. However, no matter how Guolongquan displayed his aura, he still could not suppress Li Zongjio. The latter did not seem to feel it at all. He just stood there calmly. It's not too late if you kneel down and admit your mistake and reflect on your actions. Li Zongjio said. If it was in the past, Guolongquan would not even have the chance to speak. By now, his head would probably be rolling on the ground. However, Li Zongjio liked to reason now. After all, there was a process and a stage. Haha, you want me to kneel down? In today's world, only the great emperor can make me kneel down. I don't think the others have been born yet. Guolongquan did not know where Li Zongjio came from, but there must be something strange about him. Moreover, Li Zongjio dared to ask him to kneel down in front of them. They were simply trying to rebel. Take these two down. Guolongquan waved his hand. He ordered the Black Soul Army behind him to take action. Sumo shook his head helplessly. Why did these people have to court death? However, they absolutely could not let these people offend Li Zongjio. Whether it was public or private, they must protect Li Zongjio and Qi Yanran. Although Sumo knew that the two of them did not need any protection and could kill everyone in front of him with a sneeze, that was another matter. Immediately, The Vermilion Bird Army stood in front of the Black Soul Army. They did not budge an inch. General Su, it seems that you are stubborn. You actually dared to confront the Black Soul Army in the sacred city. When I see the Emperor, I only need to explain this matter, and you will lose your position as the commander of the Vermilion Bird Army. Guolongquan said calmly. At the same time, he was very confused. What was wrong with Sumo? Why did he have to do this at this time? It seemed that he was determined to go against him today. He must have taken the wrong medicine. Of course, he could not let Sumo be too arrogant. Now the Onyx Soul Army was the hero army of the commoners. They killed the enemy and defended the city. Not only did the Vermilion Bird Army not have any battle achievements, they even dared to make an enemy out of the Black Soul Army. They were simply seeking their own deaths. Vermilion Bird Army, listen up. Kill anyone who moves. Sumo directly issued a death order. As the governor of two armies, how could Guolongquan be frightened by a little girl like you? Onyx Soul Army, kill them all. Guolongquan also gave the order. None of them were pushovers. How could they allow a little girl like you to behave atrociously over their heads? Boom. Boom. Both sides unleashed their auras at the same time. Immediately, two storms, one black and one red, condensed in the sky. Stop. They didn't have time to fight. A voice that sounded like a lion's roar came from afar. Boom. As this voice rang out, the aura of the two armies collapsed at the same time. The newcomer wore a purple-gold dragon robe. An imposing voice rang out, and this pair of sharp eyes caused everyone present to feel an intense pressure. Emperor, your humble servant greets the Emperor. The newcomer was the current Emperor Xingyan. When Guolongquan and the others saw the Emperor Xingyan, they were all shocked. They actually alarmed the Emperor Xingyan. Moreover, Emperor Xingyan rarely showed his strength. Today his aura exploded. He was so strong. He was at least at the peak of the origin Emperor realm. Emperor Xingyan was the former 14th prince. He didn't care about Guolongquan and the others who were kneeling on the ground. His heart was filled with anxiety as he quickly walked in front of Li Zhongjio. He suppressed his excitement. Disciple greets the master. Master's wife. Emperor Xingyan directly knelt in front of Li Zhongjio. After he finished speaking, he didn't get up, because Li Zhongjio didn't allow him to get up. Therefore, he continued to kneel here. When he heard Emperor Xingyan's words and saw Emperor Xingyan kneeling in front of this young man, Guolongquan immediately felt as if someone had stabbed him in the back with a sword. He immediately broke out in cold sweat. Guolongquan couldn't believe it. What was going on? Guorenjia, who was kneeling a little behind, was stunned on the spot. What did this mean? Master? Master's wife? Emperor Xingyan's master and master's wife? Just these two seemingly ordinary young people. Everyone knew that Emperor Xingyan's master was the legendary Evil Lord. Evil Lord. The legendary Evil Lord. When Guorenjia came to his senses, he felt as if he had been thrown into the water and then fished out again. It can't be true, right? Could it be that Emperor Xingyan didn't see wrongly, so there was such a misunderstanding? Should he take a closer look? This was a human life. He couldn't make a mistake. If he made a mistake, the problem would be serious. Get up. Li Zhongjio said lightly. You know to come and see your master's wife. You're considerate. Emperor Xingyan quickly got up. In fact, Li Zhongjio didn't really recognize him as a disciple. It was only because of some reasons at that time, and because he was more sensible, that Li Zhongjio reluctantly accepted him as a registered disciple. It could be said that everything today was given to him by Li Zhongjio. Without Li Zhongjio, there would be no Emperor Xingyan today. In fact, in the power struggle 5 or 6 years ago, he would have been killed. I've already arranged for people to welcome Master and Master's wife, but Master is too powerful. It's my fault for not being able to find Master in time. Please punish me, Master. In front of Li Zhongjio, Emperor Xingyan didn't dare to raise his head and speak at all. Was this still the great emperor who commanded the wind and clouds in the imperial court? In these years, Emperor Xingyan's political achievements could be said to be very outstanding. He directly led the Xingyan dynasty to become the leader of the 3 dynasties. Moreover, the country was rich and powerful. Now everyone had food to eat. The country was truly prosperous, and the people were at peace. Even when it came to internal and external troubles, they handled them very well. It was rare to see a great emperor who could manage the world so well. In fact, the establishment of the Onyx Soul Army was facilitated by Emperor Xingyan. It was the appearance of the Onyx Soul Army that became the first line of defense against the Abyssal clan. But in front of Li Zongjiu, he was as obedient as a child. How could there be a mistake? It had to be Evil Lord without a doubt. Don't give me such empty words. Little handsome over there, repeat what you said to your father before. Li Zongjiu pointed at Guorenjia and said. Guorenjia immediately felt his heart beating rapidly. It was as if it was going to jump out of his mouth. Su Emo immediately gestured to the 2 vermilion bird soldiers to bring Guorenjia to Emperor Sheng Xingyan's mask. But Guorenjia's legs were already as soft as cotton. How could he still stand? With a bang he knelt down. Great Emperor, please spare my life. Great Emperor, please spare my life. Chapter 1539. At this moment, Guorenjia's remorse was indescribable. He even felt that it was inconceivable that such a thing would happen today. He had just casually flirted with a girl on the road, and he had hit the jackpot. Evil Lord's woman. It was the legendary Evil Lord, who could laugh at the top of the 3 dynasties. When the evil dominator had already started to dominate the continent, these people were still picking up tree barks to eat. Now that they had made a name for themselves, they just had to provoke this legendary person. After all, who would have thought that Li Zongjiu had only been a little stubborn all this time? Other than that, he had not shown much of his power. Who would have thought that the evil lord who had killed so many people in the past would become like this today? It was as if he had turned over a new leaf and started to reason with others. They had never heard of such a thing. Have you ever heard of the evil lord talking reason with you? It was simply impossible. Take him away and behead him. There was no need for Emperor Xingyan to interrogate him. How could his master make things difficult for him for no reason? Even if he really wanted to kill him for no reason, it was just a matter of words. There was nothing strange about it. How can you be so careless? You are the commander of this prison, aren't you? Li Zongjiu called over the commander of the prison guards who had been cowering at the side, because he wanted to make a move, but did not dare to do so. This guy was still considered good. He was not impulsive, so Li Zongjiu did not intend to make a move on him. He just wanted to teach him a simple lesson. Yes, use all the methods you have learned on him. Let him understand a little bit, and feel the taste of this kind of torture. Make him confess all the bad things he has done in his life. Li Zongjiu said. Obviously, this was a very direct order. He was going to torture him thoroughly. How could he let Li Zongjiu off so easily after offending him? At the very least, he had to peel off a layer of his skin. I can't let you die yet. Otherwise, the name Li Zongjiu Evil Lord would be a waste. Yes, Lord Imperial Tutor. The guard commander hurriedly ordered his men to capture Guorenjia. Now that he had something good to offer to Guorenjia, it was time for him to give it to the latter. Moreover, there were many people in the Sky Prison who didn't like Guorenjia at all. Some even felt rather disgusted with him. Who would have thought that Guorenjia would fall from power one day? From today onwards, the Guo family was finished. Who would have thought that Guo Longquan's nearly 10 years of hard work would be squandered by his son in just one morning? And you? Li Zongjiu pointed at Emperor Xingyan and said, don't you know that Su Emo is my friend? Could it be that my evil lord's friend is so easily pointed at by someone with a weapon? I let Su Emo stay in the Vermilion Bird Army because I respect her. But you don't seem to take it seriously. Li Zongjiu looked at Emperor Xingyan in front of him. Emperor Xingyan's heart skipped a beat. He was very polite to Su Emo. Even Su Emo dared to stand up and point out his mistakes. In the entire Xingyan dynasty, other than Su Emo, there was no one who dared to be so bold. How could he not respect Su Emo? It was all because of this trash in front of him. If it wasn't for Guo Longquan, how could this situation have happened? Emperor Xingyan wanted nothing more than to strangle Guo Longquan to death. This disciple doesn't dare. This disciple failed in disciplining his subordinates and offended Martial Uncle Su. Since Su Emo was Li Zongjiu's friend, this meant that their seniority was different. It had to be said that Suemo was able to sit on the throne because of his quick reaction. He immediately knelt in front of Li Zhongjie. He didn't dare to raise his head. This was the first time Emperor Xingyan had knelt down so many times since he took the throne. He never thought that there would be such a thing that Emperor Xingyan didn't even dare to stand up. He didn't even kneel in front of his father's tombstone so often. It was clear that Suemo was afraid of Li Zhongjie. This is the emperor. What are you doing? Suemo saw Emperor Xingyan kneel down again, and quickly went forward to help Emperor Xingyan up. Your Majesty, you don't have to do this. Suemo is a soldier. Since Suemo spoke up for Emperor Xingyan, Li Zhongjie could be forgiven. However, Guolongquan couldn't be easily forgiven. As for General Guo, I haven't thought of how to deal with him yet. However, I feel good when I see General Guo kneeling here. You can kneel here until the end of the school competition, Li Zhongjie said. Guolongquan trembled all over. Thank you, Imperial Tutor. This was because if someone like Li Zhongjie wanted to kill him, all he needed to do was to say the word. No matter how hard you worked, no matter how great your military achievements were, in the end, he could trample you to death with a single step. This matter was that simple. Sure enough, if Li Zhongjie asked him to kneel, he had to kneel. Emperor Xingyan was also very surprised. He didn't expect Li Zhongjie to spare their lives and not kill them. If it was in the past, these people would have been cut into several pieces and scattered on the ground. How could there still be a complete body? Anyone who had a little understanding of Li Zhongjie's means would know that this evil lord couldn't be provoked. No matter who you offend, you can't offend the evil lord. Otherwise, the situation would be as miserable as it could be. Sometimes you wouldn't even think of it. As for the Onyx Soul Army, Li Zhongjie also let them go. After all, the Onyx Soul Army was only a soldier. There was nothing wrong with obeying military orders. If they disobeyed, it would be a real mistake. However, there were still people who had to die. That was Guo Renjie's group of underlings. These people were simply a bunch of vermin. They followed behind Guo Renjie all day long, like a fox assuming the tiger's majesty and flattering him. For such people, of course, they should be directly executed on the spot. They were just fence-sitters and didn't have any use. The reason why he didn't kill Guo Renjie was to give Guolongquan something to think about. Although he was a little arrogant, at least he did something. But after this incident, he had no idea what was going on. It was impossible for the Sacred Flame Emperor to continue using Guolongquan in the future. If there was an opportunity, he would immediately execute Guolongquan. He would just casually find an excuse to deal with it. It wasn't a troublesome matter. Master, you came to watch the national school competition. Follow me to the special private room. It has a good view. Emperor Xingyan said. Now the matter was finally resolved. The most important thing was that he always felt that Li Zhongjie had changed into a different person. He never thought that there would be such a change. If it was in the past, the Guo family would have to compensate until they went bankrupt. The previous Li Zhongjie was a fraud. Anyone who had experienced it would know. No need, we're just looking. Li Zhongjie waved his hand and said, You can go do your own thing. There's no need to wander around here. Emperor Xingyan understood that Li Zhongjie didn't want to be disturbed, so he cupped his hands and left. After Suemo and Li Zhongjie said goodbye, he also led the Vermilion Bird Army to follow Emperor Xingyan's footsteps. After all, he was a soldier. It was his duty to protect Emperor Xingyan. I didn't expect you to have the aura of a teacher. Qi Yanran looked at Li Zhongjie and said, I'm very good at teaching people. Li Zhongjie naturally wouldn't be polite. Such people can never be completely killed. Even if one dies, another will appear. It will always be like this. No matter how the rules are set, the same thing will always happen. Since ancient times, it has never been cut off. Qi Yanran sighed. If it weren't for the fact that the two of them were not weak, they would have been doomed today. They escaped, but there were many similar situations. Many people didn't have the ability to avoid such situations. They could only be forced to accept such a fate. Heaven is unfair, so you have to study hard. Only with strength can you get rid of your fate. It's the same for everyone. Li Zhongjie looked at the sky above his head and said slowly, Chapter 1540. The Exploration of the Way of Heaven. He did not delve too deeply into it. The most important thing was, of course, to cherish the people in front of him. Cherish the present time. Looking up at the sky all day long and thinking about life was actually a waste of time. Although Li Zhongjiu and Bai Yunfei could be said to have an endless lifespan, as long as one didn't seek death and wasn't killed by a strong enemy, it would be easy for one to have a lifespan of tens of thousands of years. However, many things would appear and happen during these tens of thousands of years. The future was difficult to predict. Even the most powerful people would meet someone even more powerful one day. This was also a cycle that came from the way of heaven. Li Zhongjiu did not care. He was already very satisfied in this life. In the following days, he only needed to protect the grass and trees in Wuxia city. With Qi Yanran by his side and his parents by his side, what else could he hope for? However, it seemed that it was time to urge his parents to work harder and give birth to a son. Otherwise, their long lifespan would be very boring. After reaching a certain level, one could basically let go of things like managing a city and managing a family's property. It would be a waste of one's lifespan to do such things. There was nothing to do at all. As for some rules in the human world, they were in fact set by the strong, but there would never be perfect rules. Unfairness was everywhere. If you wanted to make the world more fair to you, then you needed to work harder. Only when you became stronger could you have the fairness in the world and enjoy real fair treatment. Li Zhongjiu founded the Tianzong Academy, and it could be said that he spared no effort for the Tianzong Academy. It was to let more people have a fair chance. He was evil lord, not a psychopath. His style of doing things was a little strange, but he also had the thinking of a normal person. What Li Zhongjiu did was what a normal person would do, because he had the strength. Even if he had any dissatisfaction, he could release it at any time. It was not that many people were willing to compromise. Almost everyone wanted to live and become someone like Li Zhongjiu, but there were very few people who could really succeed. Li Zhongjiu thought that he had succeeded. There was only one such person in the world. So he was evil lord. The others were different. They didn't have the strength, and they would never have the opportunity to do so. But fortunately, the prosperous scene in Qingkuan Sacred City was also real. Everywhere was a scene of prosperity. In fact, there were very few people who dared to abuse their power in Qingkuan Sacred City. This was because Emperor Xingyan hated such behavior very much. However, Guolongquan had become a little arrogant recently. That was why such a situation had occurred. She hadn't grasped her position well enough, and it was mainly because she had been tricked by her son. He spoiled her too much. Seeing that it was about time, the two of them strolled around the streets and bought some snacks. Then, they walked towards the guild hall. The national interschool tournament was held in the number 1 arena of Qingkuan Sacred City. The Heaven's Door Arena continued. The plan for the Heaven's Door Arena was learned from the Heike dynasty. However, this place was relatively more formal, unlike the Heike dynasty, where blood splattered everywhere. The Heaven's Door Arena's appearance was also to facilitate the exchange of cultivation between people. Being able to interact with each other was the most important thing. Otherwise, if they stayed behind closed doors forever, they would definitely create a monster. The tickets for Li Zhongjiu and Li Zhongjiu were also obtained by Xiao Zhao. Even the White Deer Mansion's name was used to prepare for this tournament. After all, the White Deer Mansion also needed new blood. If there were outstanding students among these students, they would be directly selected. If they entered the White Deer Mansion, it was equivalent to reaching the heavens in a single bound. Therefore, the youths of this batch were very hardworking. Li Zhongjiu and Li Zhongjiu's tickets were only ordinary seats. Sometimes, when one integrated with these ordinary people, it was as if one had truly integrated into the world. Once one became famous, doing such ordinary things would give one a different feeling. However, if one said that they were in such a state from the start, they would not be able to do so. In reality, that was just an excuse for their mediocrity. They had no choice, so they could only live an ordinary and comfortable life. However, when one became strong, the situation would be completely different. This Heaven's Door Arena is pretty big. Li Zhongjiu held a large bucket in his hands. Inside the bucket were many pieces of corn that had just popped out. Everyone else called this thing popcorn. It was a kind of snack. This was a secret recipe that Li Zongjio had specially brought back from the sacred martial realm. Later on, he had handed it over to the White Deer Mansion, and this popcorn had become popular all over the country. The main ingredient was only corn kernels. Therefore, more than 99% of the 100,000 spectators had come to watch this brilliant battle with popcorn in their hands. As gongs, drums, and swana sounds rang out, the 100,000 plus people in the arena quieted down. There were seats all around the arena, while the stage was in the middle. Therefore, the spectators from all directions were able to clearly see what was going on in the arena. The person who stepped onto the stage was a gorgeous host. She attracted everyone's attention as soon as she stepped onto the stage. The introduction was mainly about the reward rules of this competition, as well as some information about the organizers. Most people probably didn't hear anything else. They only heard at the end that the champion of the competition would receive a grade 9 elixir. There was no doubt that this was the work of the White Deer Mansion. Apart from the White Deer Mansion, no one else would be able to take out such a valuable item. Everyone cheered loudly, mainly because this reward was too shocking for them. Moreover, apart from the participants receiving rewards for winning, the spectators also received rewards. Every spectator's admission ticket was actually a lottery ticket. There would be 10 lottery draws midway. 10 people would be drawn each time. A total of 100 people would receive a reward. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire arena boiled over. 100 people would be rewarded with a grade 5 elixir. Was there a mistake? This was too extravagant. A grade 5 elixir was given out in one go. This was truly a suffocating operation. At the same time, this was also a great publicity campaign. Almost everyone could participate in this kind of love, so no one would feel too tired. Who came up with these ideas? After hearing the host's introduction, Qi Yanran was completely shocked. This kind of thinking was really hard to believe. Who in the world would be willing to give a grade 5 elixir to random people for free, even if you spent money to buy a ticket? But you also watched the competition, so the prize was also incidental. Yet it could greatly mobilize the enthusiasm of these people. It was simply unbelievable. Even Qi Yanran was full of admiration. Xiao Zhao, I don't know. His thinking seems to be a little ahead of its time. Li Zongjio was also a little confused. Just as they were chatting, he suddenly thought of someone. Who knew how long that little fatty had been gone for? Why wasn't there much movement? Li Zongjio also didn't deliberately look for him, because this kind of thing was hard to say. Under the heavenly Tao, there was a destiny. Some things couldn't be forced. But there were some things that you had to fight desperately for. And this little fatty was Wang Jing. He was Li Zongjio's only true brother in his previous life. At the beginning of this life, Li Zongjio also couldn't wait to find Wang Jing and use his talent in alchemy to teach the disciples of the Li family. But later, Wang Jing also found an opportunity to leave. So at this moment, Li Zongjio also understood that these things couldn't be forced. When the time came, it would naturally come. Chapter 1541. Until now, Li Zongjio had not deliberately searched for news of Wang Jing. However, this kid seemed to have disappeared, which made Li Zongjio a little surprised. Either this guy hid very well, or this guy was already dead. Whether he was dead or not, based on Li Zongjio's understanding of the latter, he would not die so easily. With this guy's strength, it would be very difficult to kill him. Therefore, something must have happened to him. Even in his previous life, Wang Jing's rise was not so fast. No one knew where Wang Jing had been all this time. The scene returned to the competition. After the host finished his introduction, the elders of the 4 major academies appeared and acted as the judges. At the same time, they were there to protect the safety of the participants. These people were all primitive emperors. No matter how powerful these students were, it was impossible for them to break through to the Yuan monarch realm in such a short period of time. Therefore, it was more than enough for the primitive emperors to come and control the situation. After all, they were just students of the academies. Zhou Zheng was also among them. For major academies, Tianzong Academy, Royal Academy, Heavenly Star Medicine Manor, and Pine Academy. These 4 academies were also very famous. At the same time, there were almost 20 judges and referees below the stage. They were in charge of supervising these competitions to prevent anyone from interfering and breaking the rules. This was because this was an exchange between students and not a life-and-death battle. If anyone tried to kill, they would be warned. All aspects of preparation were also quite sufficient. The competition would directly determine the top 50 experts. Moreover, these 50 people would also be included in the first National Academy ranking list. It was a very good honor. With Li Zhongjio and Zhou Zheng's cultivation realm, watching these young people fight in front of them was like watching a fight between children. However, when they saw some exciting counterattacks, they could not help but applaud. Usually, the atmosphere in their daily lives was too depressing. Many people did not know why they were so busy. Even Li Zhongjio had been working hard on his cultivation during this time. It seemed that he was very eager to break through to the celestial realm. However, he had not been able to make a breakthrough in the past few years. He was merely at innate level 3. For Li Zhongjio, whose cultivation path had always been smooth, this was undoubtedly a blow. Immediately, Li Zhongjio thought that if he came out to relax and slow down his cultivation, he might be able to reap some unexpected benefits. The excitement of the previous battles could only be considered average. However, they were still young after all. At least they were able to let Li Zhongjio see their efforts in the arena. This kind of tenacity and unyielding willpower was quite admirable. After several rounds of lucky draw, Qi Yinran finally won the prize. Qi Yinran was so happy that she jumped up and down. She didn't know if the organizer did it on purpose or not. It was only a 5th grade pill. For Qi Yinran, this pill was nothing at all. However, what made the latter so happy wasn't the medicinal pill, but rather the luck that he had. Suddenly, the audience was shouting Xia Shue's name. He even added the word goddess at the end. It seemed that Xia Shui was also the most popular one in the audience. When the latter appeared, it also made everyone go crazy. The reputation that Xia Shui had accumulated over the years was very high. And this year happened to be Xia Shui's last year in the academy. She would officially graduate next year. Xia Shui also used her own strength to hand in the best results. She defeated the other heroes and became the first in the audience. She shone brightly in the audience. This was already a normal competition. The top 50 had already been compared. Tianzong Academy directly sat firmly in the first place. This was because Tianzong Academy directly occupied 9 of the top 10 positions. Tianzong Medicine Manor was almost at the bottom. After all, Tianzong Medicine Manor itself was a group of people who were also alchemists. Because of the addition of Chaowu Pavilion, Tianzong Academy's combat power in this area had also improved. Lan Yiyan heaved a sigh of relief when she was able to achieve such results. Yes, at least she finally saw the results of her efforts over the years. She did not disappoint. As for the only 10th place in the top 10, it was from Qingsong Academy. This person was definitely an all-powerful existence in the untainted land. Even in the eyes of the latter, these Tianzong Academy and the like were not worth mentioning at all. How could they be his opponent? The first place should be his. But the reality was very cruel. Unexpectedly, 9 people in a row were no match for him. In the end, he barely occupied a position with the 10th place. And this position might have been deliberately arranged by Tianzong Academy. They just did not want to give people the feeling that Tianzong Academy was too strong. Wouldn't that be too bad? They still wanted to give people a friendly feeling. Only then did they give up on continuing to fight. Only then did they get a place in Qingsong Academy. Even the geniuses in the untainted land had begun to lose their competitiveness here. This meant that the overall level of the Shengwu continent was also improving. The reason why the untainted land was mysterious in the past was that there were many powerful existences in the untainted land. Ordinary people could not touch them. Wherever they touched, the other party would directly be in a very ridiculously powerful state. They had long surpassed the limits of the untainted land. That was why they were mysterious. However, as the strength of the Shengwu continent increased, These originally mysterious sects would no longer be mysterious. In fact, they would become even more ordinary. It seemed that the next step was to unveil the mysterious veil of the untainted land. The National Academy Martial Arts competition came to an end. Li Zhongjie and the others also stood up and applauded, expressing their blessings for the end of this competition. However, within the range of Li Zhongjie's mind power, a figure was rapidly approaching. Immediately Li Zhongjie frowned. What's wrong? Beside him, Qi Yanran sensed the change in Li Zhongjie's mood. News from the sacred martial realm. Li Zhongjie stretched out his hand and waved. It was a message talisman bird. This kind of bird had its own formation and could fly for hundreds of thousands of miles. It was also researched by Li Zhongjie. Sometimes, if he needed to prepare something, he would use this message talisman bird to directly send a message to the sacred martial realm. Chu Yan would prepare the thing in advance. However, this time, it was Chu Yan who took the initiative to send the message. Li Zhongjie was a little surprised. When Li Zhongjie read the attached content of the message talisman bird, his expression changed. It's bad. Something happened in the sacred martial realm. Qi Yanran rarely saw anything that could make Li Zhongjie's expression change. What is it? The ape clan. Li Zhongjie said slowly. A trace of shock flashed in Qi Yanran's eyes. The ape clan. Chapter 1542. Originally, there was an award ceremony at the end. She wanted to invite Li Zhongjie and Li Tianlan to be special guests. But in the end, she found that the two of them had disappeared. They had left in advance. In the end, Lan Yiyan changed her plan. She invited Emperor Xingyan out. It could be said that he had managed to subdue the crowd. At this moment in the backstage, beside Lan Yiyan, there was a fat man in plain clothes. He was holding a thick account book in his hand. Look, the tickets are selling like hot cakes. And the winners are all our own people. It's not a loss at all. Wang Jing was counting money until his hands went soft. Originally, according to Wang Jing's plan, the finals should be held a week later. That way, there would be more suspense. But Lan Yiyan didn't dare to take such a big risk. If the response wasn't good, wouldn't that be troublesome? So, she put the plan on hold for the next round. But after the competition, it did generate a lot of revenue for the entire Tianzong Academy. After all, the Tianzong Academy was a branch of the White Deer Mansion. But the Tianzong Academy couldn't always get revenue from the White Deer Mansion. In that case, if the Tianzong Academy couldn't grow independently, it would never have a breakthrough. Originally, the Tianzong Academy was already in the teaching aspect. Under Lan Yiyan's control, it could be said to have reached the extreme. It even tended to be stable. But if the Tianzong Academy wanted to have a bigger breakthrough, Lan Yiyan didn't have that ability. But Lan Yiyan found a treasure boy by chance. This person was Wang Jing. When Wang Jing joined, Lan Yiyan was like a tiger that had grown wings. She directly added in some wonderful ideas, expanding the influence of the Tianzong Academy to the maximum. Recently, I've contacted a few old friends in the Untainted Land. We've already agreed to open a training site in the Untainted Land. We'll exchange students from both sides to improve communication. Wang Jing said. Obviously, Wang Jing was also very keen on this career in front of him. For the current situation, Wang Jing himself was also very passionate. Over the years, he had experienced a lot of things, and he also had a narrow escape from death. At the same time, Wang Jing himself had already expected this. In the future, there would be immeasurable dangers. If they wanted to survive in such a crisis, they would have to be very careful. Therefore, it was necessary to vigorously develop the future and increase the strength of the people. Wang Jing's experiences during this period of time had made him realize that this was the only way to go. He had to use these future powerhouses to deal with the impending crisis. However, Wang Jing originally wanted to show off his skills. But when he turned around, he saw that Li Zhongjie had already paved the way. Since there was such a good deal, of course he would take it over. In any case, their goal was the same. Fortunately, Lan Yiyan was very open-minded and was able to accept Wang Jing's idea. Lan Yiyan's eyes lit up when she heard Wang Jing mention the Untainted Land. Wang Jing was indeed related to the untainted land. If it was her younger brother, Kuan Erasure, he would also be living in the untainted land and would not return home for many years. When she saw this guy, she would definitely give him a good beating. Are you going to send him to the untainted land so early? It's getting late. We won't have much time left. In addition, I've also invited some Supreme Being friends to refine a training tower together. In this training tower, the speed of cultivation will be faster, and the effects will be stronger, Wang Jing said. Lan Yuyan did not ask about Wang Jing's mysterious origin. Everyone had their own secrets. As long as Wang Jing was really doing it for the Heavenly Sect Academy, there was no problem. It was a piece of cake. By the way, when I passed by the Heavenly Prison, why did I see someone kneeling there? There are many people kneeling in front of the Heavenly Prison. Lan Yuyan waved her hand and said, now that the first competition had finally come to an end, Lan Yuyan heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. Moreover, her team's results were pretty good this time. Finally he could relax a little. At the entrance of the Heavenly Prison, when the guards of the Heavenly Prison saw that old General Guolongquan was still kneeling there, they felt like they were dreaming. Now, Guolongquan's military achievements were outstanding, and he had completed many tasks very well. He was also a hero in everyone's heart. However, it was a pity today. He could have offended anyone, but he had to offend the current imperial protector, Senior Evil Lord. It was the father's fault if the son did not teach him well. Until now, Guorenjia's painful cries could still be heard from the iron windows of the Heavenly Prison. Every time Guolongquan heard it, his heart would tremble. But it was worth rejoicing over. Li Zhongjio did not want to take their lives. If they did not know how to be grateful, there would be no need for Li Zhongjio to take action. Naturally, there would be someone who could easily get rid of them. It was best not to overestimate oneself. If they honestly corrected their mistakes, they would be able to live a good life. However, if they were stubborn, they would not be able to live freely. A guard came to inform Guolongquan. The competition was over. According to Evil Lord's words, it was time to get up. No, I can't get up yet. The Great Emperor has not forgiven me for my mistakes. Guolongquan understood. The evil revered emperor's words were very clear, but the sacred flame Great Emperor didn't say anything. If the evil revered emperor stood up now, it would mean that he didn't put the sacred flame Great Emperor in his eyes. Therefore, Guolongquan was still kneeling. At the same time, he was thinking about how to regain Emperor Xingyan's trust. After all, if he was not sure this time, he would lose Emperor Xingyan's trust. By the way, what did Guorenjia confess? Guolongquan asked. Li Zhongjio's order to the prison guards was to tell them all the bad things Guorenjia had done. Otherwise they would not stop. How could they not follow Evil Lord's orders? Even Emperor Xingyan did not have the guts to ask these prison guards to stop. Therefore, Guorenjia would be beaten every once in a while. Then, he would tell them all the wicked things he had done. As the prison guards recorded, they became angrier and angrier. This son of a bitch had directly harmed so many people. Immediately, a whip as thick as a wrist was lashed out. Li Zhongjio did not take Guolongquan and his son seriously. At this moment, he had also come to the sacred martial realm with Qi Yanran. If there was no urgent matter, he would not be in such a hurry to send the news to Li Zhongjio. Chapter 1543. There were no problems in Jinchang City. When Li Zhongjio and Qi Yanran arrived, Xu Yangguan, who had been waiting outside, couldn't wait to come in. Master, Senior Evil Lord. Xu Yangguan saluted Qi Yanran. Obviously, Xu Yangguan was very surprised to see Qi Yanran here. A few years had passed since then. Xu Yangguan had matured a lot. Today's Great Yan Empire, under the governance of Chu Yan, was at least maintained in a relatively prosperous situation. However, the matter of the Yuan Beast Empire had been troubling the other great nations recently. It was a problem for the entire sacred martial realm. It was impossible to stop the Yuan Beasts from building an empire. No one could do it. Moreover, the heavenly Tao was flawed. Since the Yuan Beasts had such talent and rules, they were born with it. The rest of the people in the sacred martial realm had to follow the heavenly Tao. How about we let you build the Yuan Beast Empire? As expected, they thought the Yuan Beast Empire was just a joke. After all, they were a group of beasts. How could a group of beasts manage another group of beasts establish a system? Did they really think that they were human, just because they could stand on their feet? They were still far from being human. However, the other party obviously didn't care if the empire would last long. Therefore, after the empire was built, they began to seal off the resources in the 100,000 mountains. They sent powerful Yuan beasts to guard the border, and didn't allow any humans to get close. If anyone wanted to go in to search for treasures, they would be killed by these powerful Yuan beasts. Obviously, this was a very threatening behavior. If this continued, there would be another decisive battle between humans and Yuan beasts in the future. The last disaster of the fallen race had caused such a huge loss to the human race. Until now, the human race had only recovered for a few years. They were not prepared at all. Who would have thought that in such a short time, another ape race would appear? What's the situation? Why is it so urgent? Li Zhongjiu asked. It wasn't the time for small talk. He was here to solve the problem. Just as he was about to speak, Chu Yan and Guan Yin paused for a moment. This matter was a huge disaster for the entire sacred martial realm. They couldn't believe it. Everyone was shocked when they found out about this. The entire sky of the sacred martial realm seemed to have turned blood red at this moment. The sacred mountain has been breached. Chu Yan said. Just 6 short words. Both Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yanran were shocked by the news. The sacred mountain was breached. Li Zhongjiu didn't expect this to happen either. Even the people of the sacred martial realm did not expect this. As the most powerful force in the sacred martial realm, it was also regarded as a place of protection by the various great forces. It was a place strong enough to protect the entire sacred martial realm. Just 2 days ago, it was broken through by the ape clan. No one knew what kind of lineup or attack method was used to break through the sacred mountain. They only knew that this time, it was a huge blow to the entire sacred martial realm. Heavenly Saint Kuan-Peng and the others in the sacred mountain hadn't appeared until now. They were probably dead. Otherwise, how could the sacred mountain be occupied by the meta beasts? It was really unexpected that such a situation would happen. It directly exerted a huge pressure on the entire human race. The rest of the big countries also hurriedly sent out envoys to find people to negotiate. The ordinary people didn't know about this for now. He had already suppressed this matter. Otherwise, if he had told them directly, it would have caused unnecessary panic. As an authority, one must first grasp the situation well. Now the 2 saint immortals from the east and Beikong, as well as Fu Ding, have all gone to the sacred mountain together. Experts from all sides have gathered, but the current situation is not optimistic. Even the sacred mountain has been breached. Even if these people go, what can they do? Quickly summon them back to guard the city's border and prevent the meta beasts from attacking, Qi Yanran said. Back then, the sacred mountain was guarded by Heavenly Saint Kuan-Peng. Even the experts of the fallen clan couldn't break through the sacred mountain. At least it could create a stalemate between the 2 sides. However, with the appearance of the ape clan, the sacred mountain was taken down so quickly. The thing that Li Zhongjiu was most curious about was how the ape clan came about. Could it be that another space passage was opened? Could it be that the other side also had celestial realm experts? Li Zhongjiu didn't know how strong the ape clan was, or how they came in. However, Li Zhongjiu knew that if he didn't stop them, it would cause another disaster to the entire sacred martial world, or even the sacred martial continent. That's enough. There are obviously some powerful existences, but they are not willing to show themselves. Li Zhongjiu hated the other side for not doing anything. However, on second thought, there was no problem in doing so. If there was a meta-emperor level meta-beast attacking a city now, Li Zhongjiu wouldn't do anything. Because there would naturally be people below to solve this matter. Although it might be a difficult thing for them. But it wasn't impossible. As for the price to be paid, it was a rather heavy price to pay. However, in the eyes of people at a higher level, this price was insignificant. This was also the reason why it was difficult for people with different levels of strength to sit together and have a good chat. Everyone had different points of reference and different worldviews. So how could they be on the same page? Prince Yin, General Jiang Bai, it's an emergency. A personal guard hurried to the front of Steward Chu and said, although it didn't seem to be the right time, the situation couldn't be delayed. Speak. Chu Yin ordered. The Meta Beast army has besieged Whiterun City. 2 million people are trapped in the city. Whiterun City was already a city on the second line of defense. After this unforeseen event, Chu Yin immediately evacuated the people at the border and stationed the troops at the border fortress. However, it seemed that the border had been lost, and even Whiterun City, which was used as a temporary refuge, had been surrounded by the Meta Beasts. Obviously, it was an extremely critical moment. Yanran, go to Whiterun City and check on the situation. I will go to the Sacred Mountain. Li Zhongjiu said immediately. Qi Yanran also nodded. Both sides could not afford any delay. There was no time to waste. Master, I will go with you. Chapter 1544. Ordinary metabeasts were not much of a threat to Qi Yanran. With the latter's strength, and the assistance of the Green Bird platform, as long as it was not an expert above innate level 5. Basically, staying alive was not a problem. Compared to some special circumstances, it was inevitable that there would be problems. For example, the devouring Yuan clan that he encountered previously. Very few people's cultivation state could be as strong as Li Zhongjiu's. His origin energy and physical body had been cultivated to a peak state. However, the devouring Yuan clan was most afraid of people with strong physical bodies. However, the previous situation happened because it was too sudden. Moreover, Qi Yanran's strength was not as strong as it was now. If it happened again, the devouring Yuan clan would be wiped out. Therefore, Li Zhongjiu directly rushed towards the Sacred Mountain. Boom! Li Zhongjiu immediately shuttled through the countless clouds. Finally, he arrived within 1,000 miles of the Sacred Mountain. However, at this moment, Li Zhongjiu could not help but stop. Formation. Li Zhongjiu's current cultivation in formations was quite strong. Although the front looked calm and empty, it had already been covered by a formation. If he approached, he would definitely be discovered by the other party. Breath control. Li Zhongjiu descended. If it was in the past, he would not be so low-key. He would just rush in and kill together. However, he was now facing the legendary ape clan. Moreover, Li Zhongjiu did not know the other party's situation. How could they break through the Sacred Mountain so quickly? They were at least in the innate level. This was because Heavenly Sage Kuan Peng could at least reach the innate level 1 in the Sacred Mountain. Back then, the one who had the Heavenly Book of Fallen could only reach the innate level 1 in the state of the Heavenly Book of Fallen. Therefore, both sides couldn't do anything to each other. Even if the people below were to fight fiercely, as long as a Xiantian expert appeared, they would be able to wipe out the people below. That would be an easy task. Therefore, the battles between the various Great War realms were nothing more than a game. In the eyes of a true expert, no matter how you do it, it won't have much of an impact. It's not a problem at all. Only when this person who was truly at the pinnacle was taken care of would the matter be truly settled. Therefore, to be able to break through the Sacred Mountain, there must be an expert within the ape tribe. If they had already been killed, then Li Zhongjiu would not be able to bring them back to life. So it was better to be safe. After all, a real man knows when to yield and when to stand tall. Li Zhongjiu activated an aura-concealing array formation on his body. Using his own essence force as the foundation of the array formation, he added it to his own body. At the very least, he could deceive the opponent's array formation. Although the other party's array formation covered a wide area, it wasn't much stronger than Li Zhongjiu in a real battle. It was just that Li Zhongjiu was more cautious. His aura was like that of a stone. If one's cultivation wasn't high enough, they wouldn't be able to see the changes in Li Zhongjiu's body. Even without using Yuan power, Li Zhongjiu was still able to move as if he was flying. On this piece of land, he felt as if he was flying. Li Zhongjiu's speed was also exceptionally fast. In the blink of an eye, he crossed 1,000 miles. Ahead was the boundary of the Sacred Mountain. However, Li Zongjiu had already seen the changes in the sacred mountain. Hundreds of sky-piercing stone pillars surrounded the sacred mountain. At the bottom of each pillar, there were also chains that bound the people who used to live in the sacred mountain to the top. Among this group of people, Li Zongjiu also saw one of the figures. It was Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng. At this moment, Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng was also sitting cross-legged on a lotus platform. Furthermore, there was a mountain above Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng's head that was pressing down on him. It was constantly releasing a strong aura that made it difficult for Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng to leave the lotus platform. They had to use this method to restrain Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng. This was the reason why the other party was able to take down the sacred mountain. Evidently, Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng had already fallen into the other party's trap. Otherwise, he wouldn't have ended up like this. However, Li Zongjiu didn't care about the process. Although he could see some figures on the path of the sacred mountain. However, they were only ordinary meta-beasts. Their strength was only at the supreme being level. Meta-beasts with such strength were nothing to be afraid of. However, the ape tribe did have the ability to tame these meta-beasts. Li Zongjiu didn't see any figures of the ape tribe. This made things a little difficult for him. He immediately prepared to catch a meta-beast and use his soul-searching technique to search for the information in the other party's mind. He could at least get some information and figure out what was going on. Suddenly, two figures broke through the air. One of them turned into a huge dragon sparrow and charged towards the mountain-shaped treasure above Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng's head. Boom! Immediately, a violent vibration spread out. Suddenly, a figure jumped down from the stone pillar. There was a pitch-black iron rod in his hand. He smashed it towards the dragon sparrow. This dragon sparrow was Tianyi. Ever since the great battle in the sacred martial realm, Tianyi hadn't left. Now she had completed the task that her ancestor had given her. All she wanted was to pass the heavenly tribulation. Now that she had finally entered the Supreme Saint realm, she naturally didn't need the treasures of the other two tribes. Therefore, Tianyi wanted to live for herself. Back then, Fu Ding had sacrificed himself to save her life. Now, it was only natural that he wanted to return the favor with his life. Therefore, Tianyi accepted Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng's invitation. She usually cultivated on the sacred mountain and enjoyed the peaceful days. Occasionally, she would go out with Fu Ding to train. However, Fu Ding was obviously very dissatisfied with his strength. If he wanted to be with Tianyi, he had to be strong enough. He had to be at least half as strong as his master. Li Zongjiu saw the figure that jumped down. He held a long rod and looked like an ape. However, his behavior was basically similar to that of a human. There was no doubt that he was an ape. If he couldn't tell that the person in front of him was an ape, then Li Zongjiu might as well be blind. Clearly, Tianyi attacked to attract the ape. Tianyi's cultivation was also at the Supreme Saint realm. In the past few years, she had also made a small breakthrough. However, she was forcefully suppressed by the ape's combat power. Most importantly, the ape was only at the Supreme Saint realm, but it could suppress Tianyi, who was at the Supreme Saint realm. Clearly, the ape's combat awareness and attack power were very strong. Just as Tianyi attracted the ape's attention, another silhouette was quietly approaching. He also restrained his aura to the extreme. His figure was extremely fast as he passed through. Whoosh! It was a familiar voice. Fu Ding. Fu Ding rushed out. He was immediately discovered by some meta-beasts. Immediately, these meta-beasts also rushed directly towards Fu Ding. In just 3 years, Fu Ding's cultivation had also entered the Supreme Saint realm. In addition to the cultivation of his willpower, the latter's combat power would definitely be more shocking. Go! Demon Suppression! Fu Ding threw out the Demon Suppression ruler in his hand. Immediately, the Demon Suppression ruler directly suppressed all the meta-beasts that rushed forward under the ruler. Boom! He suppressed more than 10 supreme-level meta-beasts alone. Fu Ding's target was obviously Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng. Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng was now the strongest in the entire sacred martial realm. Moreover, the other party also used this strange weapon to trap Heavenly Saint Kuan-peng. Otherwise, he would definitely be able to defeat the other party. Li Zongjiu saw Fu Ding's actions in the dark. This idea was good. However, it was a little bold. The other party's strength was obviously not that simple. Then he saw the figure of another ape clan expert appear. He charged towards Fu Ding. However, just as the second ape clan expert was about to attack, another heavenly demon dragon sparrow descended from the sky. It directly grabbed with its sharp claws and brought the ape clan expert to the sky. The first silhouette was actually formed by the blade of creation. Interesting. Li Zongjiu nodded his head as he watched. These people were all outstanding. Chapter 1545. The performance of these people was beyond Li Zongjiu's expectations. At least in the beginning, Li Zongjiu was also confused by the other party's lineup. He did not see clearly that the first figure was formed by the blade of creation. Although this series of coordination could not be maintained for too long, it could at least be said that Fu Ding was now in front of Heavenly Sage Kuan-peng. Heavenly Sage Kuan-peng opened his eyes with anticipation. Fu Ding swallowed the elixir that he had placed in his mouth. At this moment, Fu Ding's mental strength increased tremendously. His aura was also released instantly. They blasted out in all directions. Boom! Another demon-suppressing ruler appeared in Fu Ding's hand. Obviously, the demon-suppressing ruler in his hand was formed by Fu Ding's willpower. Now Fu Ding could condense his willpower to such an extent. According to this realm, he was at least Hotian level 6, or even level 7. It was naturally far from Li Zongjiu's level. However, with this level of willpower, he could easily defeat a supreme-level meta-beast. Break for me. It could be said that he had used all his strength in this move. He had done so much to prepare for this move. If he could not save Heavenly Sage Kuan-peng in front of him, they would all be finished. Boom! A terrifying force that shook the heavens and earth attacked. This move is quite good. Li Zongjiu saw that Fu Ding's move was swift and decisive, sparing no effort. This move had already adjusted his condition to the peak. Even if a supreme-level meta-beast was standing in front of him, it would not be able to withstand it. It was estimated that this strike of the ruler could directly split it into two halves. It failed. In the next moment, Li Zongjiu's expression changed again. This was because Li Zongjiu sensed that a figure had appeared quickly, and it happened to be blocking in front of Heavenly Sage Kuan-peng. With just one finger, it easily blocked Fu Ding's attack. Boom! The terrifying power was only emitted from his fingers. Other than that, it did not have any other effect. That was all. An expert of the ape clan. Another one came. There were a total of 3 ape warriors. Furthermore, Li Zongjiu could sense that the ape tribe powerhouse in front of him was the strongest. You wish. Unfortunately, your strength is a bit lacking. This ape before him was actually speaking. Furthermore, it was mocking Fu Ding. What? Fu Ding had never thought that there would be another ape. How were they going to play now? They were all played to death. Just as he was about to continue attacking the other party, the ape sneered and crushed the demon-suppressing ruler that was formed from Fu Ding's will with a single hand. At the same time, he threw out a punch and sent the latter flying. Bang! He fell heavily to the ground. The blade of creation was forced back to its original form. Furthermore, Fu Ding's devil-suppressing ruler had been instantly stepped on by the ape race expert. Originally, the devil-suppressing ruler had been flying towards Fu Ding, but now he was directly controlled by the ape expert. In the sky, Tianyi was fighting with the ape clan's experts. After the blade of creation returned to its position, she was equally matched with the other party. However, when she saw that Fu Ding had fallen into the hands of the other party, she dashed towards Fu Ding immediately. She was bent on saving Fu Ding. No matter what, she would not leave Fu Ding alone. Boom! Tianyi's figure landed behind Fu Ding. The 3 ape race powerhouses had returned to their positions and were facing off against the 2 of them. There were also dozens of supreme-level meta-beasts that were surrounding them from all directions. This time they were completely done for. Don't bother about me. You leave first. Fu Ding said to Tianyi. If all of them were to die here, there would be no hope for the human race. No matter what, at least one of them had to be alive to spread the news. I won't leave you behind, Tianyi said resolutely. In fact, for hundreds of years, Tian had always been alone. She had cultivated until now. However, in the past few years, being able to cultivate together with Fu Ding had Tian feeling a warmth that she had never felt before. This feeling was very good. No matter what, she would not leave Fu Ding alone. This is the fun of the human race. You harm others in yourself. You are so indecisive. However, you are obviously from the demon race. Why do you want to degrade yourself? The strongest ape race member stepped forward and said. There seemed to be a ray of light in his eyes. It was as if flames were burning in his eyes. It was daunting, and the boldness of this imposing manner instantly suppressed Tian. Immediately, Tian seemed to be sucked in by a force. Tian was also being controlled by the latter. What are you trying to do? When Fu Ding saw that Tian Yi's condition had become quite unnatural, he knew that this ape race member must be up to something. He actually wanted to control Tian Yi. You are courting death. Seeing Fu Ding rushing towards him, an ape race expert next to him directly punched towards Fu Ding's head. Killing a person was nothing in their eyes. Fu Ding was already prepared to fight with these people. Immediately, when the figure rushed over. However, he heard a swoosh sound. This ape race expert's punch actually missed. Fu Ding's figure disappeared. What? The ape race expert who punched out was also stunned. He had clearly locked onto the latter's figure. How could he have let him slip away? There is an expert. The leading ape race expert retracted his flame-like eyes. His eyes looked around vigilantly, because even Tian had been rescued by someone. In just the blink of an eye, even his method of control had not been completed. Tian Yi's figure directly disappeared. This caused the latter to be quite shocked. Who exactly took action? No, it's an illusion. The leading ape race expert looked around, but did not find any trace of her. Not to mention a person, he did not even see a strand of hair. Then, the ape powerhouse once again released his flame-like eyes. Like a flame, it burned everything in front of him. At this moment, the surrounding world seemed to be constantly being burned and refined. However, this layer of the illusion world was incomparably sturdy. It would take some time to see through it. At this moment, Fu Ding was also surprised to see the three ape race experts in front of him, and the surrounding supreme primordial beasts all standing on the spot. Immediately, he was extremely surprised. The next moment, a familiar figure appeared in front of him, causing Fu Ding to become excited. Master. Chapter 1546. Fu Ding saw Li Zhongjie in front of him. He was pleasantly surprised. Then he looked at Tian Yi. It seemed that she was injured by the ape expert's attack just now. Until now, she had not woken up and had fallen into a coma. Master, look at Miss Tian Yi. Fu Ding hurriedly said. Li Zhongjie used an illusion to control the other party. Seeing Tian Yi's state, Li Zhongjie also took a step forward and pulled Tian Yi out of the power that she was immersed in. Originally, Tian Yi was also directly trapped in a power similar to an illusion. Because she was also controlled by the other party, such a situation would occur. As Li Zhongjie released his mental power, it also directly woke Tian Yi up. However, Tian Yi had the blade of creation to protect her. Even if Li Zhongjie did not do anything, Tian Yi would be able to recover quickly without any external support. It's you. Tian Yi saw Li Zhongjie in front of her. In the past, she had fought with Li Zhongjie several times. Later, it was unintentional that they joined forces to fight. Although she fought against Li Zhongjie and Qi Yanran, she only wanted the Bluebird platform to help her break through her limit. But now, there was no conflict with Li Zhongjie. Unless Li Zhongjie wanted to settle old scores, she would be beaten to death by Li Zhongjie. Since you fought for the human clan, the previous score is written off. Li Zhongjie looked at Tian Yi and said. Li Zhongjie was not a stingy person. Since Tian Yi and he both came from the Shengwu continent, and in the last battle against the fallen race, Tian Yi also contributed a lot. Now she was firmly on the side of the human clan. Li Zhongjie was fine with it. He didn't want to argue with her. What's more, it seemed that Tian Yi was very close to Fu Ding now. Maybe they would become a good couple. Master, quickly save Heavenly Saint Kuanpeng. These ape experts have already occupied the sacred mountain. They are here to seize the heavenly book. Fu Ding said. The human heavenly book. There was no doubt that it was an extremely powerful treasure. If they fell into the hands of the ape experts, then based on what Li Zhongjiu knew, the ape experts would have directly obtained the 3 heavenly books. Ape clan, fallen race, and human clan. There were only 9 heavenly books in the world. If you collected all 3 books, you would be able to sweep across the 9 realms. It was really too terrifying. No matter what, Li Zhongjiu would not let them take the heavenly book away. The close combat ability of these apes is extremely strong. I'm afraid that they were born with superior combat awareness. Fortunately, their mental strength is relatively weak, so it's easy for them to fall into illusions. Tonight, I'll find a chance to rescue Heavenly Saint Kuanpeng. Li Zhongjiu said. Since these people's close combat ability was so strong, he did not have to fight them directly. Instead, he used his mental strength to deal with them and let them fall into the illusion. However, Li Zhongjiu was still too careless. Although the other party was ambushed by Li Zhongjiu's illusion, and the effect seemed to be very good, they reacted very quickly, especially the strongest one. He had a name, the Phantom Ape. The Phantom Ape was proficient in the Tao of Mind. Even these meta beasts were controlled by him. Otherwise, these meta beasts might not be so obedient. As for the other 2 apes, they were just ordinary Dijon spiritual apes. Their combat ability was very outstanding. When the illusionary spirit ape broke Li Zhongjiu's illusion, it managed to locate Li Zhongjiu's location based on the remnants of Li Zhongjiu's mental strength. This caused Li Zhongjiu to be slightly surprised. Interesting. Both of you, go to the side. I want to see how strong these apes are. Li Zhongjiu said. When the 2 of them heard Li Zhongjiu's words, they went to the side without hesitation. They all went into hiding and watched Li Zhongjiu, waiting for him to start fighting. They were surprised that these apes could catch up. All of them were rather surprised. Even Li Zhongjiu was surprised. He hadn't expected the methods of the ape race to be even more formidable than he had imagined. Whoosh, whoosh, boom. The 2 spiritual battle apes descended from the sky with a black metal rod in each of their hands. They had tall bodies, sharp eyes, fangs in their mouths, and a wild aura. When they saw Li Zhongjiu, they dashed towards Li Zhongjiu without hesitation. This was what the Phantom Ape had told them. When they saw Li Zhongjiu, they did not need to say anything. They just attacked and killed him. They did not want to give Li Zhongjiu time to release his illusion. Therefore, the 2 spiritual battle apes also quickly moved to attack. 2 huge metal rods. At the same time, they smashed towards Li Zhongjiu. What a strong aura. This aura is 10 times stronger than when we were fighting before. Fu Ding and the other one hid in the distance. They felt unsafe and retreated for more than 10 meters. Even when they were fighting before, they did not see the 2 apes use any weapons. Boom. The 2 rods fell towards Li Zhongjiu at the same time. However, Li Zhongjiu had already left his original spot. When the rods landed on the ground, it shattered the ground. It was like an earthquake. A fissure that was thousands of meters long instantly appeared. Just looking at this scene made one's heart palpitate. If the rods landed on him, he would be smashed into pieces and turned into a pile of minced meat. This was a very normal thing, and was not hard to predict. You guys are too slow. Li Zhongjiu's figure appeared behind the spiritual battle apes without anyone noticing. At the same time, he threw out a punch. Instantly, it struck the head of one of the spiritual battle apes and blasted it away. Bang! The spiritual battle ape flew out several hundred meters and smashed into a small mountain peak. It immediately landed and shook its head. Its eyes were filled with ferocity. Interesting. The corner of the spiritual battle ape's mouth curled into a cold smile. It did not expect to meet such an expert. After so long, these apes had not met any decent experts. Even when they saw Li Zhongjiu just now, they did not have the intention to be too serious. They just wanted to play around. Who knew that Li Zhongjiu would be so arrogant and powerful? He sent it flying with just one punch. The other spiritual battle ape that was not sent flying also reacted and fought with Li Zhongjiu. Bang! 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 The 2 of them exchanged more than 10 blows on the ground. In the end, Li Zhongjiu saw the opportunity and threw the spiritual battle ape over his shoulder, throwing it to the ground. Boom! The ground under the spiritual battle ape was like a deep well that was blasted out by a huge bomb. It was at least a few hundred meters deep. The spiritual battle ape laid in the deep hole and looked up at Li Zhongjiu. This fall could be said to have directly smashed his internal organs into smithereens. Whoosh! Suddenly, a dark shadow flew over quickly. The spiritual battle ape in the deep pit also forcefully opened its eyes. It saw its weapon flying towards it. The black rod instantly pierced through the spiritual battle ape's shoulder. It pinned the spiritual battle ape in the deep hole. Roar! After being injured, the spiritual battle ape instinctively roared in pain. This was simply too painful. However, the ape tribe had a special characteristic. The more they fought, the braver they became. The spiritual battle ape, who was roaring in pain, pulled out the iron rod. It was still stained with its own blood. Then it leaped up and flew towards the deep hole. Its aura also set off a stormy wave in the surroundings. Bang! Li Zhongjiu did not continue to care about this ape. The spiritual battle ape that was sent flying just now attacked once again. Moreover, its attack speed suddenly increased. Li Zhongjiu was also fighting with his bare hands. Chapter 1547. The opponent's spiritual battle ape was quite good at using the rod. Li Zhongjiu could not help but speed up. However, the spiritual battle ape finally found a gap and used the rod to push Li Zhongjiu back by a dozen steps. Your strength is only SOSO. After the spiritual battle ape succeeded, it said proudly. Obviously, it was quite satisfied with its attack. At the very least, it was able to get back its pride, and it felt quite proud of itself. Bang! The spiritual battle ape that was thrown into the hole by Li Zhongjiu also jumped out. The wound on its shoulder was healing at an amazing speed. Li Zhongjiu rubbed his stomach. In fact, Li Zhongjiu had purposely gone easy on the previous attack, because he wanted to test the power of the spiritual battle ape's rod. However, it seemed that it could only make him feel pain. However, their staff techniques were indeed quite exquisite. Li Zhongjiu was also very curious about this. Your rod skills should be natural, right? Li Zhongjiu looked at them. It should be because of their natural strength and their special body structure that they could achieve such an effect. If it were other people, they would not be able to have such smooth movements and precise strength. Looks like I have to catch one or two of them to study your rod skills. Li Zhongjiu said. If he could learn the rod skills of the spiritual battle ape tribe from them, it would definitely become a set of extremely powerful martial skills secret book. Wanna learn? Let me hit you a few more times and you'll learn it. The two spiritual battle apes immediately roared and charged towards Li Zhongjiu again. Boom! Freeze! Li Zhongjiu's mental energy instantly exploded. The powerful willpower instantly froze the two spiritual battle apes in place. The black dragon hammer appeared in his hand. Li Zhongjiu immediately took a step forward and hammered each of them. Bang! The two spiritual battle apes were directly sent flying. They flew for more than 1,000 meters, and the rocks along the way were all shattered. Finally, they stopped under the support of a gentle force. It was the spiritual battle ape that was good at mental energy. The spiritual battle ape finally came. Obviously, the spiritual battle ape was extremely afraid of Li Zhongjiu and did not attack Li Zhongjiu. I guess you're the strongest person in the human tribe. The spiritual battle ape and Li Zhongjiu maintained a distance of nearly 200 meters. At least within this distance, if Li Zhongjiu made any strange moves, he could react in an instant and escape. Li Zhongjiu's illusion technique was above him, so he absolutely didn't dare to confront Li Zhongjiu head-on. However, after being vigilant, it wouldn't be so easy to trap them in this illusion. Among the human tribe, I'm at most average. If it was in the past, Li Zhongjiu would not waste so much time talking to him. He would just beat him up and be done with it. However, the situation was different now. If the three spiritual battle apes joined forces, they would still be a threat. Moreover, Li Zhongjiu was not being humble. What he said was true. This was because there were indeed some very strong existences among the human tribe. Li Zhongjiu did not know about them in the past. Now that he knew, it was better to keep a low profile. However, the apes didn't believe this. Even the most powerful sacred mountain of the human race had been taken down by them. They simply couldn't withstand a single blow. As long as Li Zongjie was eliminated, then it would be equivalent to ruling over the human race. This way, when the great emperor came, he could directly take the human relations heavenly book away. If he could do such a good job, he would definitely be praised. Therefore, these spiritual battle apes wanted to get rid of this man before them. We of the spiritual battle apes have no ill intentions. We just want to develop together. As long as you hand over the human tribe heavenly book, we of the spiritual battle apes will definitely not step foot into the territory of the human tribe. You guys can continue living your lives peacefully without disturbing. The intelligence of this spiritual battle ape was not low. In fact, it could even be said to be extremely high. Li Zongjie listened to the words of this fella. Naturally, he did not believe it. Only a fool would believe it. When it came to scheming, the human tribe was the granddaddy. How could such a clumsy performance fool Li Zongjie? Sure. Li Zongjie agreed immediately. This had the spiritual battle ape stunned for a moment. Could this be a trap? How could he agree to it so easily? If that was the case, wouldn't they have wasted all their effort earlier on? To think that he would agree to it so quickly. I'll help you look for it. Li Zongjie rummaged through his storage ring. Then, from an unknown corner, he took out something that looked like a book. The human tribe heavenly book is here. Come and get it. Li Zongjie gestured to the spiritual battle ape. The look of surprise on the spiritual battle ape's face gradually disappeared and turned into a cold glint. Immediately, he looked at Li Zongjie. A murderous aura could be seen from the corner of his mouth. Do you think I'm a fool? This thing was just an ordinary book. How could it be the human tribe heavenly book? Have you seen the human tribe heavenly book before? Li Zongjie retorted with a look of disdain. It was as if the spiritual battle ape was a country bumpkin who had never seen the world. This was too humiliating. Such a look. Is this really the human tribe heavenly book? When the illusionary spirit ape saw Li Zongjie's expression, it was a little suspicious in its heart. Logically speaking, the stronger one was the smarter one would be. Therefore, it was possible that Li Zongjie was thinking of surrendering and submitting to the ape race. Or perhaps, he believed in his words and thought that the ape race would not attack the human race after obtaining the human tribe heavenly book. Was he that stupid? In fact, even the illusionary spirit ape didn't quite believe it when it said those words. Of course it's fake. Li Zongjie replied straightforwardly. He thought that these guys would have some intelligence. But by the looks of it, their intelligence seemed to be lacking. Yes, they were smart. However, they did not know how to take corners. Yes, they learned things quickly. However, things like this were ever-changing. It was not something that could be learned just by thinking about it. Since these apes thought that they were smart, Li Zongjie had to play with them properly. But obviously, Li Zongjie had not expected that he would succeed so easily. They were too gullible. The spiritual battle ape was stunned. Li Zongjie mocked him mercilessly. Even Fu Ding and Tian Yi, who were in the distance, couldn't hold back their laughter in this solemn occasion. Damn it! The spiritual battle ape bared his teeth. He spat out cold air. There was a murderous look in his eyes. But he did not act rashly. He did not rush out to fight with Li Zongjie directly. What a pity. You're so smart. You probably did not expect that the cities and countries of the human race would have been conquered by the Yuan Beast army, led by the ape race. The order that I gave them previously was to kill all the humans. Don't you humans value relationships? Go back and enjoy the sadness. When my army takes over the cities, I will kill everyone in the cities as long as you don't hand over the human tribe heavenly book. You'll be responsible for the deaths of these people, the spiritual battle ape said fiercely. He wanted to make Li Zongjie bear the guilt. Is that so? Li Zongjie could not help but shake his head. Obviously, the strength of the ape race was still lacking. If the strength of the ape race in front of him was around the same level, he believed that Qi Yanran would be able to deal with them easily. In fact, Li Zongjie was not going to let the three apes leave. Actually, you guys shouldn't have come. You're only going to die if you come here and cause trouble. Today, don't go anywhere. Li Zongjie stretched out his hand and waved. Suddenly, the surrounding ground rumbled, and 4 walls shot up into the sky. The sky was filled with thunderclouds. It directly trapped the 3 great ape clans within. Kill him! The spiritual battle ape roared. The 2 spiritual battle apes moved immediately. They had long wanted to kill Li Zhongjie. Now they could finally take action. Chapter 1548. Initially, Li Zhongjie had been wary of the ape tribe. After all, Li Zhongjie had been wary of the ape tribe's expert. He had thought that most of the ape tribe would be extremely powerful. On top of that, the fact that the ape tribe was able to take down the sacred mountain so easily had Li Zhongjie surprised. However, after exchanging blows with the ape tribe, Lin Fan felt that the ape tribe's strength was only so-so. Although the ape tribe's overall strength was relatively strong, it was still far from being able to compete with Li Zhongjie. Let me show you the difference in strength, Li Zhongjie said slowly. Then he activated his willpower. He moved and swung his fists. Bam! When the 2 spiritual battle apes approached, they clearly saw that Li Zhongjie had already begun to move. However, he disappeared in the next second. At the same time, the 2 spiritual battle apes realized that the other party had disappeared. He was the only one left behind. They stood in the middle of the white world. The surroundings were also extremely empty. Their companions had disappeared as well. No matter which direction he waved the staff in, there was no movement at all. Oh no, it's another illusion. Li Zhongjie had made them fall into an illusion with just a wave of his hand. Moreover, he had trapped the 2 spiritual battle apes. Li Zhongjie's attack was aimed at one of the illusionary spiritual apes in front of him. When dealing with the illusionary spiritual battle apes, he would naturally use illusions to weaken their strength. When dealing with the illusionary spiritual battle apes, he would break through them. This was the best way. Therefore, Li Zhongjie approached the ape tribe immediately. The illusionary spiritual ape was shocked. It did not expect Li Zhongjie to be proficient in so many abilities. Immediately, a cold glint flashed across the illusionary spirit ape's eyes. It immediately unleashed an illusory technique in an attempt to trap Li Zhongjie. However, there was no time to undo the illusory technique on the spiritual battle ape. If it could trap Li Zhongjie, everything would be resolved. However, the illusionary spiritual ape's illusion had no effect on Li Zhongjie. He broke it in the blink of an eye. Then his fist landed on the illusionary spiritual ape. The illusionary spiritual ape was so frightened that it screamed and fled. Whoosh! Li Zhongjie followed closely behind. The illusionary spiritual ape had nowhere to run. Fall! Li Zhongjie's figure suddenly appeared in front of the illusionary spirit ape. With a single punch, he sent the illusionary spirit ape flying. Bam! The illusionary spiritual ape was hit, and it spat out blood. Suddenly, he flipped over and stood up. At the same time, he pulled out the monkey hair on his head and blew at Li Zhongjie. Hundreds of illusionary spiritual apes appeared. Another illusion? However, the ape tribe's defense seems to be stronger. Li Zhongjie did not hold back when he punched the illusionary spiritual ape. However, the illusionary spiritual ape was unharmed. Although it spat out blood, it did not die. If it was someone else, they would have exploded on the spot. In fact, the illusionary spiritual ape was shocked as well. It knew that Li Zhongjie's fist was strong, but it did not expect it to be so strong. Therefore, it had to release its ultimate move in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, Li Zhongjie would continue to attack. However, the hundreds of illusionary spiritual apes' doppelgangers also released their illusion at the same time. At this moment, Li Zhongjie finally felt the power of the illusionary spiritual ape. It was as if he was trapped in a quagmire and could not move. Interesting. Although Li Zhongjie was awake and was not confused by the illusionary spiritual ape, the illusionary spiritual ape was affecting Li Zhongjie's body. At the same time, the illusionary spiritual ape wanted to wake up the spiritual battle apes. However, when it got close to the spiritual battle apes, it realized that the 2 spiritual battle apes were attacking it at the same time. Bam! At this moment, the spiritual battle apes seemed to have regained their consciousness. They saw that Li Zhongjie was approaching and wanted to attack them. Of course, they lifted their poles and smashed it at him. Idiot! You guys are attacking the wrong person. The illusionary spiritual ape was caught off guard by the attacks of the two spiritual battle apes. After all, most of its strength was used to control Li Zongjiu. Otherwise, the two spiritual battle apes would not be controlled by Li Zongjiu. Bam! The illusionary spiritual ape was pushed back by the spiritual battle ape's strength. Even its body was being attacked by the spiritual battle apes. Bang! 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 After a while, the illusionary spiritual ape was hit in the head by one of the spiritual battle apes. Its head exploded on the spot, creating a bloody and violent scene. In the distance, Fu Ding and Tian Yi had also finished watching this normal battle. In fact, Li Zongjiu was simply standing at the same spot, and had never left. However, the three great ape tribes were slaughtering each other right away. The scene was indeed quite bizarre. What a strong will! Moreover, your master also has a strong illusionary spiritual skill. If it were not for the illusionary spiritual skill, it would not have been so easy to fool the illusionary spiritual ape. The illusionary spiritual ape was killed. The remaining two spiritual battle apes were also killed by Li Zongjiu. When the last spiritual battle ape was still breathing, Li Zongjiu removed the illusionary spiritual skill, and let the spiritual battle ape see clearly that Li Zongjiu did not move at all. They were trapped in the illusionary spiritual skill. This was the scary part of a strong will. It could easily confuse the other party. They would not even know how they died. In the future, you must remember not to casually snatch other people's things. Li Zongjiu said calmly. Finally, after the last spiritual battle ape heard these words, it immediately breathed its last and fell to the ground. However, things were not that simple. The three corpses in front of Li Zongjiu turned into three black hairs in front of him. What? Li Zongjiu's eyes suddenly flashed. He had worked so hard to get rid of 3 hairs. Li Zongjiu could not believe it. How could this be? How could this be? Li Zongjiu picked up the hairs of the ape clan. He did not detect any energy waves. However, the corpses turned into monkey hairs. Li Zongjiu could not figure it out. There's something strange about the hairs. Li Zongjiu had a vague guess in his heart. After all, it wasn't a simple matter to open a portal in such a directional manner. Back then, the ape race powerhouse had only extended a hand. After that, there were no other actions. Either these apes were released at that time, or in reality, these apes were merely transformed from the hair of the ape race powerhouse. Just a strand of hair is so strong. Li Zongjiu was shocked. If the elite ape clan was a celestial realm being, how scary would a celestial realm be? Just thinking about it sent chills down his spine. Master, you're so strong. Can you teach me this move too? Fu Ding came in front of Li Zongjiu and said, I was born with it. Li Zongjiu said indifferently. Tian Yi had experienced Li Zongjiu's illusory power a long time ago. If it weren't for that illusory power, she wouldn't have had the chance to come to the sacred martial realm and experience such an experience. What's this? Tian Yi looked at the 3 hairs in Li Zongjiu's hand. At first glance, there seemed to be nothing special. However, the corpses of the 3 apes were gone. Looking at Li Zongjiu's expression, it seemed that this problem was quite serious. These are the 3 apes just now. Chapter 1549. Tian Yi and Fu Ding were even more shocked. They had been fighting for such a long time, but they were only fighting with 3 strands of hair. Just those 3 strands of hair alone were enough to force the ape race to such a state. Even the current situation was beyond their expectations. Fu Ding and the others had tried their best, but in the end, they were no match for them. If it weren't for Li Zongjiu's help, most likely, they were all done for. Right now they should have been captured by the ape clan. They were either killed or locked up. They would probably end up like Heavenly Sage Kuanpeng. Therefore, it seemed that they had only scratched the surface of the ape clan's strength. Master, the ape clan said that they want to attack our city? Let's go and help. Fu Ding also said anxiously. He remembered what the ape clan said before. Anyway, with Li Zongjiu here, nothing should happen. As long as Li Zongjiu arrived in time, he would definitely be able to save them from this crisis. Your master's wife is already dealing with it. There won't be a problem. Li Zongjiu said. With Qi Yanran's help, these problems would not be a problem. although the ape clan did have a lot of tricks up their sleeves. However, Qi Yanran's current strength was also extraordinarily strong. Moreover, he did not know if Qi Yanran had learned any powerful moves from the Green Bird platform. If she had, then it would be very easy for her to deal with these people. Even Li Zhongjie did not dare to say that he had the confidence to win. Master's wife is here too? That's great. When Fu Ding heard that Qi Yanran had also come, he was also relieved. At least with Li Zhongjie's love for Qi Yanran, he would not let her be in danger. At this moment, Qi Yanran was also fighting with two spiritual warriors apes. But the battle was also quite intense. Qi Yanran was not good at illusion, so she could only fight with these spiritual warriors apes head-on. After a series of head-on clashes, the fluctuations that erupted during the battle were even more earth-shattering. But it was all under Qi Yanran's control. In the end, the two spiritual battle apes were beaten into a single strand of hair. It floated to the ground. When Qi Yanran saw this scene, her eyes were obviously filled with shock. Just 2 strands of hair from the ape clan's expert were already so powerful. If it was his true self that came, how terrifying would that be? It really worried Qi Yanran. The rest of the Meta Beast army was naturally defeated by Qi Yanran. Qi Yanran was now a master of the natural realm. Naturally, they were much stronger than the people in front of him. Qi Yanran, who was as heroic as a goddess, once again became a figure that was worshipped and admired by all the people in the world. It was precisely because of the intervention of such an expert that their lives were saved. Otherwise, the attack of the ape race would have definitely caused great suffering. Chu Yan, Guan Yan, and the others heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Master had taken action. He didn't know how the battle at the Holy Mountain was going. The news of the sacred mountain being conquered had yet to spread. If the common people knew that the sacred mountain had been attacked, they would be in trouble. If it was occupied by the enemy, the world would probably be thrown into chaos. At this time, faith was very important. I'll leave the rest to you. I'll go and take a look at Li Zhongjie. Qi Yanran said. Master, don't worry. Guan Yin nodded and said. Now that the ape race had been eliminated, the rest of the matter was naturally not difficult for them. Guan Yin was still very capable of handling such a situation. After Qi Yanran nodded, her figure swept in the direction of the sacred mountain. At this time, Li Zhongjie had also dealt with the 3 apes, and came in front of Heavenly Sage Kuenpeng. Those supreme-level meta beasts underground were all handed over to Tian-Yi to deal with. After all, Tian-Yi was a master of the natural realm. Dealing with these meta beasts was a piece of cake. TSK, why are you so miserable, brother Kuenpeng? Li Zhongjie couldn't help but tease. This heavenly sage Kuenpeng was indeed miserable. Every time someone came to attack the human race, they would first look for the Kuenpeng heavenly sage. After all, this guy was the #1 official of the human race. He was the guardian of the sacred mountain, but he wasn't recognized by the human network heavenly sage. After all, his talent was still lacking. Until now, he hadn't entered the natural realm. Therefore, it was natural that the human heavenly book didn't choose him. Probably, entering the natural realm was the minimum requirement. There were so many realms above, and there were bound to be some stronger people. Don't laugh at me. Do you think I want to? Heavenly Sage Kuenpeng was also full of grievances. It was written clearly on his old face. Becoming the guardian of the sacred mountain here, he thought that he could get enough benefits. But in fact, there was nothing. If any powerful enemy from another world came, the first thing they would do would be to attack him. How difficult was it? These days were really too difficult. He couldn't go on living. Li Zhongjie studied the mountain that was pressing on top of Heavenly Sage Kuenpeng's head. It was a magical treasure. Now that the ape tribe was dead, they were gradually losing their strength. Therefore, after Li Zhongjie increased his strength, he directly put away the magic treasure. In the blink of an eye, the originally huge mountain turned into a small ornamental stone the size of a palm. Don't look down on this stone. Li Zhongjie could feel the power of chaos from it. Just like the chaos bell, it could contain the power of chaos. At the same time, Li Zhongjie was also somewhat puzzled. He reckoned that this primal chaos force was so powerful that it could penetrate through the three realms. Otherwise, this primal chaos force would be practically omnipresent, and in such a powerful state. After breaking free, Heavenly Sage Kuanping was like a wild horse that had broken free from its reins. He stretched his body. He didn't expect that he would be pressed under the mountain at such an old age. It was like bullying an old man. Fortunately, Li Zhongjiu took action. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as simple as being pressed under the mountain. It was estimated that within a few days, they would be killed directly. The people who were tied to the sky-reaching stone pillars had also been released. However, Li Zhongjiu had a strange premonition when he saw the sky-piercing stone pillar. How did they release these stone pillars? Li Zhongjiu could clearly sense that these stone pillars did not belong to the sacred martial realm. Li Zhongjiu used his mental energy to probe them, and was shocked to discover that they were not from the sacred martial realm. These stone pillars had merged with the sacred mountain. There was also a force flowing and circulating. However, this force didn't have a specific function. Li Zhongjiu couldn't tell for the time being. He only knew that if the sky-reaching stone pillar were to be destroyed, the entire sacred mountain would also be destroyed. At the same time, the sacred martial realm would be damaged. Chapter 1550. Only the sky-reaching stone pillars in front of them could not be destroyed at all. They could only stay here. At the same time, Li Zhongjiu could only temporarily isolate the sky-reaching stone pillars with his own strength. Although he did not know what the sky-reaching stone pillars were doing, it was definitely not a good thing. Therefore, it was the right choice to isolate them first. At this moment above the sky, there was also a five-colored divine light that quickly swept over. Boom! It was Qi Yanran, Master's wife. After seeing Qi Yanran, Fu Ding hurriedly greeted her. Good boy. Qi Yanran was also very satisfied with Fu Ding. At least this little guy looked very obedient. You've grown up a lot. Qi Yanran greeted him. Of course, she also saw Tian Yi standing beside Fu Ding. She nodded to Tian Yi. Now Tian Yi was no longer a match for Qi Yanran. Perhaps even Tian Yi herself did not expect that Qi Yanran and Li Zhongjiu's strength would break through so quickly. How long had it been? They had become so powerful in such a short time. This made Tian Yi quite surprised in her heart. But fortunately, Tian Yi could rely on the blade of fate in her hand. At least in the future, she would have a great guarantee. In the future, her realm would definitely not be low. After becoming powerful, Qi Yanran naturally did not have any hostility towards Tian Yi. After all, everyone had a purpose, not to mention that they were comrades in arms who fought side by side in the past. If you have time, let's go to the Saint Martial continent and have a cup of tea together. Qi Yanran invited Tian Yi. After all, in the face of foreign enemies, they were also comrades in the United Front, and they already had this relationship with each other. Of course, there was no need to make the relationship so tense. Okay. Tian Yi also nodded. Originally, Tian Yi didn't have any feelings for Li Zhongjiu and Lin Mingya. She had made it very clear that she just wanted to borrow the Blue Bird Dao platform in order to break through her own heavenly tribulation, to reach the absolute saint realm. In the end, he succeeded. Unfortunately, it was this disciple of Li Zhongjiu who had blocked an extremely fatal and crucial blow for her, allowing her to successfully overcome this crisis. Speaking of which, she even had to thank Li Zhongjiu. Are you alright? Li Zhongjiu and the Kuanping heavenly sage landed at the same time. They had also gone to isolate the sky-piercing stone pillars. This was to prevent the auras between the stone pillars from attracting each other. Because this stone pillar came from the ape clan, it was hard to say what kind of strange power was contained in them. Perhaps they themselves were teleportation gates. Once these powers were combined, they could instantly open a huge teleportation array. If that was the case, the sacred martial realm would be in trouble. I'm fine. I met two apes, but after I killed them I turned into this. Qi Yanran took out the two hairs of the ape clan. Li Zhongjiu also took out 3 strands of ape fur. It's the same on our side. It seems like the strength of the ape clan is unfathomable. They almost destroyed the entire sacred martial realm with just a few strands of hair. Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yinran also felt quite serious. After all, this matter didn't seem to be so simple. If they were to fight with the real ape clan next time, they wondered what would happen. Why don't you just inherit the human heavenly book and become the guardian of the human race? With the power of human heavenly book, these people will have nowhere to hide. The Kuanpeng heavenly sage advised. Only Li Zhongjiu was the most suitable. He was obviously a person who cared about the world, but he had to pretend to be very cold. This made people very unhappy. I'm not interested in that now. Li Zhongjiu immediately shook his head. Although Li Zhongjiu yearned for the power of the person divine book, he also knew that he would have to pay a huge price in order to obtain the person divine book. Li Zhongjiu didn't want to compromise so quickly for the sake of power. Therefore, he still needed to cultivate on his own. Even the legendary Black Sea Overlord didn't necessarily master the power of the 9 lineages heavenly book. He relied entirely on his own strength to reach his current level. However, the 9 lineages heavenly book. If there was a chance, Li Zhongjiu would definitely snatch the heavenly book from the devouring Yuan clan. He had a deep hatred for the devouring Yuan clan. Moreover, he had long been unhappy with the devouring Yuan clan. If he wanted to resist the power of the ape clan, he would have to use the power of the heavenly book. At least for now, it seemed that the ape clan wouldn't be able to make a comeback in a short time. All of you should be careful from now on. There might still be traces of the ape tribe in some corner. Moreover, there might be any activity from this stone pillar. If there is any movement from it, hurry and inform me, Li Zhongjiu said. This time, the ape clan's problem was solved. However, Li Zhongjiu couldn't possibly stay here for a long time. Anyway, if there was anything, he just had to look for them through the teleportation formation. It was very convenient. After giving careful instructions, Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yinran also patrolled the surrounding area. After confirming that there were no traces of the ape clan in these big countries, it seemed that there shouldn't be any problems. In addition, they collected some more resources and brought them back to the Xinggu continent. However, in Li Zhongjiu's opinion, the ape clan wasn't simple. Judging from the previous fight with the ape clan wasn't that stupid. On the contrary, they were very courageous and resourceful. If Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yinran hadn't arrived in time, the entire Xinggu continent would have been destroyed. The entire human race's sacred mountain would also be destroyed. In addition, the few countries in the sacred martial realm would also be easily destroyed. The destruction of the human race would have happened in an instant. As for the so-called Yuan Beast Empire, after the ape clan disappeared, it naturally fell apart. Even if there were a few smart guys in the Yuan Beast Empire, they wouldn't be able to withstand the rest of the stupid and boorish people. They could even easily overthrow the empire you built. This was the situation at the moment. The Yuan Beast Empire was still unyielding. The 6 big countries entered a trend of stability again. However, after this battle, the Xinggu continent also had a wide range of geniuses. Opening the door of the Xinggu continent to cultivate the powerful new forces of the future generations became the most important thing. The number of experts that could be brought out in this world was simply too few. For the Xinggu continent, it was necessary to cultivate these people and nurture them into geniuses who could truly stand on their own. This was the only way. Only then could they ensure that they would have the strength to fight against the invasion of the foreign tribes in the future. Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yinran returned to the Xinggu continent. The two of them often went into seclusion and occasionally came out to accompany their families. In the blink of an eye, spring passed and autumn came. 5 years later. Chapter 1551. Wuxia Mountain. Right now, Sunset Mountain completed this type of truly incomparable action. Tens of thousands of origin energy thrusters. They had sent the entire Wuxia Mountain into the sky. It was 120 feet above the ground. When they saw Wuxia Mountain, it actually appeared in such a state. When everyone in the world saw it, they were also amazed. This also meant that Wuxia City would truly be high and mighty. This was a high and mighty city. Everyone believed that everyone could feel the power of Wuxia City. The greatest significance of having the entire city and the mountain suspended in the air, was that if an ordinary person wanted to launch an attack, they would not be able to do so. That was also a very difficult thing, as long as Wuxia city put away the cloud ladder. Wanting to enter the city was as difficult as ascending to heaven. Unless you could ascend to heaven otherwise, you would not be able to enter Wuxia city. Also, once you were attacked, you could even directly take the city and escape through the sky, leaving no trace for the enemy. Naturally, there were also some origin beasts. These potential threats could also be greatly reduced. Such an advanced city was simply a true fortress in the sky. Li Zhongjiu personally set up tens of thousands of arrays to shape Wuxia city into a real iron fortress. Besides that, Li Zhongjiu also personally mobilized hundreds of Tianwu ships. There were also several giant Tianwu ships. Although the Da country was not very powerful, the strength of the warships was still very good. At least they could build these warships. And they were all in a rather advanced state. In the 8 corners of the city, there were giant warships connected to the city with iron chains. This could also greatly increase the degree of insurance. It could prevent the risk of the entire city losing control and falling. Hundreds of Tianwu ships were also hovering above the city in order to drive away some flying origin beasts that were close to the city. After witnessing the city fly into the sky, Li Tianqing and the others were so moved that they kept exclaiming. In the end, they could not help but applaud. It was too amazing. Such a magnificent feat in their eyes. It was simply a miracle. A true miracle had appeared in front of their eyes. Who would be able to witness such a thing? An entire city had flown up into the sky. Was there anything more awesome than this? Li Zhongjiu was also very satisfied. He had been busy with a lot of things. Even when Wuxia city flew into the sky, he invited Qi Xiaohun and the others. At least these 2 families had become a family. Naturally, they had to have a good meal together. After drinking, Qi Xiaohun and Li Tianqing had almost become brothers of life and death. They drank until they were dead drunk. The 2 of them were also heroes of their time. If Li Tianqing was not born poor, he would not be any worse than them. And now he also had a very powerful son. Their cultivations had also skyrocketed to the utmost exalted realm. Presently, Sunset City was fully deserving of the reputation of being the #1 city in the world. In addition, the Tianzong Academy had become the #1 academy in the world. However, recently, the Tianzong Academy had also started to establish branches of different factions. There was always some knowledge that needed to be learned in a special place. They even set up a chaos branch in the Untainted Land. Only those with outstanding cultivation talent in the main school could be sent to the desolate branch to continue their studies. The dean of the chaos branch was Kuan Erishur. Shuiyu was the vice dean. After these 2 people traveled around the world, they did not hesitate to choose to devote themselves to the great education cause. At the same time, with the name of Evil Lord, they also established an extremely huge system in the Untainted Land. This kind of operation also made people in the world exclaim. They studied in the Chaos Branch for 3 years. There would be countless sects in the Untainted Land coming to select disciples. Level by level, they would contribute to the cultivation of top talents. Li Zhongjiu also often went to the Untainted Land. This was because Wang Jing's main focus was now on the Wilderness Branch. The first batch of elders in the Chaos Branch. It was Xia Shui and the others. Only 5 years had passed. Xia Shui had stepped into the threshold of the Supremacy Realm. Such aptitude stunned the entire Untainted Land. It was not because Xia Shui had touched the threshold of the Supremacy Realm at such a young age, but because the speed of her cultivation breakthrough had always been in a steady state. She had never had the slightest intention of discouraging. In fact, Xia Shui had long been able to reach the Supremacy Realm. However, under normal circumstances she had suppressed it. She did not rashly break into the Supremacy Realm. This was mainly because once she entered the Supremacy Realm, then, who would teach her cultivation in the future? Therefore, this was also a problem that troubled Wang Jing. Logically speaking, since she was already in the Supremacy Realm, why would she need someone to teach her? But in fact there was no end to learning. Any realm needed someone to guide you. Even if you were to use your own wisdom to learn, You still needed a teacher to guide you in front of you. Therefore, Wang Jing was now instigating Li Zongjiu to come out and teach from time to time. When Li Zongjiu heard this, he waved his hand repeatedly. I don't have so much time to play with these little brats. Li Zongjiu wanted to do the education thing, but he only needed to give a direction and provide a lot of resources. He did not need to do it himself. In fact, today, 5 years later, the original seed had already bloomed and bore fruit. Even the current operation did not cost much, and there was even a lot of feedback. Just these students who had been sent out, after becoming successful and famous, had donated money to the school. There were also various ways to make money. However, Lan Yuyan tried not to let the Tianzong Academy have any connection with this business. Once commercial activities were involved, it would be a very dangerous thing for the entire Tianzong Academy. It was even possible that the reputation of the school would collapse and be ruined by others. It's still better here. Back then, I was accidentally brought to the world of the ape clan. The people there were simply ferocious. However, these monkeys were quite cute. While drinking, Wang Jing was also reminiscing about the past. Back then, Wang Jing had also disappeared for a period of time. You've been to the ape clan continent. When Li Zongjiu heard Wang Jing's words, he was suddenly stunned. Although it could be said that after the few hairs of the ape clan were killed last time, there had never been any movements from the ape clan. However, in Li Zongjiu's heart, he had never let go of this matter. He had always been thinking about the ape clan continent. If the real body of the ape clan came, it would be a very dangerous thing. Yeah, after I left your Li family, I came here to take a bath under a waterfall. As a result, I was washed into a cave. When I came out again, I fucking found that I was in the ape clan continent. I didn't even wear any fucking clothes. When Wang Jing mentioned this matter, he was also quite angry. If it were you, wouldn't you be angry? You would want to bang your head against the wall and die. What's the situation in the ape clan continent like? Do they want to attack the Shengwu continent? Li Zongjiu did not expect that Wang Jing had actually been to the ape clan continent. This was really too surprising. The ape clan continent is not in chaos. They are very harmonious there. Why would they attack the Shengwu continent? The incident of the ape clan only happened in the Shengwu realm. However, when it was in the Shengwu realm, it was already settled by Li Zongjiu. Therefore, no one here knew about it at the moment. Could it be? Li Zongjiu guessed. Either Wang Jing went to a fake ape clan continent, or there was a problem in the ape clan continent itself. Generally, these were the two situations. If there was peace between the two clans, it would naturally be the best thing. No one wanted a life and death battle to suddenly happen. It would turn the world upside down. Do you know what this is? Li Zongjiu took out the hairs of the ape clan from before and showed it to Wang Jing. Originally, he planned to ask the Black Sea Overlord. However, Li Zongjiu thought about it. He had his own dignity. She had already said that she would come back when she was in the Sky Realm. If he went now, it would be as if he found an excuse to look for her. Therefore, Li Zongjiu held back. When Wang Jing took the hairs from Li Zongjiu's hand, he suddenly exclaimed, "Fuck, it's the hairs of the chaotic world demonic monkey." Chapter 1552. Some information about the ape clan continent. Li Zongjiu also learned about it from Wang Jing. After all, Wang Jing had also lived in the ape clan continent for 3 years, and during this period of time, he had lived quite comfortably. He did not expect Wang Jing to have such a miraculous encounter. It seemed that many people might have encountered something like a fortuitous encounter, but it still depended on one's own luck if one wanted to truly transform this fortuitous encounter into one's own strength. If one's own strength was not enough, how could one withstand such a fortuitous encounter? Even if one was given a chance, one would have wasted it in vain. The ape clan continent was basically divided into 3 camps. However, these 3 camps were also friendly and peaceful with each other. This was because the monkeys in these 3 camps were of different species, and the areas where they lived were also different. Therefore, there would usually be no conflicts, and they were very harmonious with each other. However, there were many legends about the ape clan's continent. Among them, the most long-standing legend was about the 7 devil monkeys. It was said that the 7 devil monkeys had existed before. Needless to say about their strength. Basically, the ability of each devil monkey was to shroud the ape clan continent in darkness, feel the power of darkness, and rule the ape clan continent. No one knew what these devil monkeys were thinking in their minds. Wasn't it good to have food and drink? Why did they have to create so much trouble? However, basically, the entire ape clan continent would work hard to suppress these devil monkeys. The monkey hair in Li Zhongjiu's hand. According to Wang Jing's judgment, it should be the hair of the cosmic chaotic world devil monkey. This directly meant that the legendary cosmic chaotic world devil monkey had appeared and was now causing trouble in the ape clan continent. Perhaps, the ape clan continent had already been subverted by the cosmic chaotic world devil monkey. No, I have to go there quickly. Otherwise, I don't know what will happen to the ape clan continent. Wang Jing hurriedly drank the wine in the cup. You're going there alone? Don't you need my help? Li Zhongjiu could not help but ask. What can you do with your skinny arms and legs? Wang Jing said. Lan Kuan, who was listening from the side, was also quite surprised. This was because Wang Jing's statement was simply unprecedented. In this world, there was actually someone who dared to speak to Li Zhongjiu in such a manner. And Li Zhongjiu's club also seemed to be very calm. He did not refute Wang Jing's words. If Li Zhongjiu was not mistaken, the inheritance that Wang Jing had obtained should be one of the 7 chaotic devil monkeys. Even if it wasn't one of these 7, it definitely belonged to this level. Therefore, if they wanted to deal with the cosmic chaotic world demonic monkey, only Wang Jing could do it. Since Wang Jing said that there was no need, Li Zhongjiu naturally would not insist. After being beaten up in the end, he would obediently come to ask for help. Wang Jing walked directly to an open space, and then he muttered some unknown incantations. Then a force directly took Wang Jing away. His figure disappeared. Li Zhongjiu was also observing during this process. He found that this should be similar to a portable formation. His body had the foundation of this formation, so after chanting the incantation, he could directly activate the formation and take people away. Qi Yanran also happened to come over with a plate of freshly cut fruits. But when she saw that Wang Jing was not here, she could not help but look around. Where's Wang Jing? He went to the ape clan continent. Li Zhongjiu told Qi Yanran about Wang Jing. Is he okay alone? Qi Yanran could not help but worry. After all, the scene of fighting with the ape clan 5 years ago was still vivid in her mind. In the end, she only found out that after fighting for half a day, she only managed to kill a hair of the ape clan. Wasn't this quite a big blow to her? And now it was difficult to estimate the strength of the ape clan. She only knew that there must be a stronger existence in the ape clan. It should be fine. Li Zhongjiu shook his head and said. Wang Jing was also a mysterious person, but who didn't have their own secrets. This meeting and chat ended in a hurry. The White Deer Mansion continued to hunt down the devouring Yuan clan. Long Ji and the experts of the Sea God Palace also continued to pay attention to the situation of the Abyss clan. And just 2 months later, on the peaceful continent, a tombstone suddenly fell from the sky. With a boom, it landed in an ancient forest. This ancient forest did not belong to any of the 3 dynasties, because it was too far away. If they wanted to include it in their own territory, they would not be able to manage it. In addition, there were countless dangers and mysterious traps that devoured everything in this place. And no one had ever seen anyone bring out anything good from this place. Because of that, it was deemed to be an ominous place by others. Not many people paid attention to this place. But when this tombstone fell from the sky, then, a huge tomb appeared in front of everyone's eyes. When exactly did it appear, no one could say. But when they found out, it was already a little too late. The monsters that came out of the tomb were all ferocious and extremely fast. The first to be affected was the Haika dynasty. Immediately, the leader of the Haika dynasty asked the White Deer Mansion for help in the shortest time possible. These terrifying tomb monsters carried an extremely strong aura of death. Wherever they passed, not even a blade of grass would survive. Furthermore, they had a very strong regenerative ability. Even if they were killed, they would be resurrected very quickly. This was the most frightening part. These monsters could actually resurrect endlessly. At the same time, these tomb monsters also had a special characteristic. They would only attack people who possessed Yuan Qi, and whose Yuan Qi cultivation was above the Yuan monarch realm. It seemed that in the eyes of these monsters below the Yuan monarch realm, as long as you did not deliberately seek death, they would not pay much attention to you. Just from this tomb alone, who knew how many of these monsters came out every day? Suddenly, the Shengwu continent fell into the flames of war. The sudden crisis caught many people off guard. The news did not reach Li Zhongjiu so quickly. After all, it was normal for problems to occur in the Shengwu continent from time to time. If everything was reported to Li Zhongjiu, he would be very busy. However, Li Zhongjiu felt it. In this distant and unknown forest, there seemed to be a pair of eyes watching him in the dark. This gaze even seemed to contain a kind of provocation and a kind of desire. It longed to devour him. How dare you? When Li Zhongjiu felt this surge of power, he snorted coldly. He immediately traversed thousands of miles and sent his clone over. However, Li Zhongjiu was not too impulsive. He would observe the situation first. Although Li Zhongjiu's strength was very strong, he was not invincible. There were still many mysterious existences. Just these existences alone could not be provoked. He would definitely die if he touched them. At the border of the Haika dynasty, there was a small town here. Originally, this small town also had a small city gate. However, it was now very dilapidated. Only countless rubble and ruins were piled up on the ground. There were many troops patrolling the border, and they were all sent here to help the civilians. Although the undead monsters from the mysterious tomb were very powerful, the weaker one was, the safer they would be. Li Zhongjiu stepped into the small town. There were many soldiers walking around, taking inventory. There were also many mercenary teams. These mercenaries were specially recruited to deal with the undead monsters from the tomb and capture them for research. Only by finding the weaknesses of these monsters could they find a way to break them. Therefore, they naturally needed someone to do something. Although it was relatively safe for those below the Yuan monarch level, they would still be attacked if they took the initiative to attack. Chapter 1553. Suddenly, there was a commotion outside the town. The crowd began to panic and ran towards the center of the town. Outside the town, an emergency bugle horn was blown. The soldiers who were still providing assistance in the city also quickly got into formation and rushed outside. Seeing this, Li Zhongjiu quickened his pace. At the entrance of the town, a temporary fortification was set up. There were some tomb monsters in front of them. They seemed to be enraged. "Quick, bring the child in." A commander commanded from within the fortification. About 100 meters away, there was a little girl. She seemed to have been separated from her parents and was standing in the same place, not knowing what to do. Not far away, the tomb monsters could be seen running towards them. Oh no, these tomb monsters are enraged. They kill anyone they see. The little girl won't be able to survive. After witnessing this scene, an experienced mercenary muttered to himself. It was too cruel. However, in the face of such a disaster, it was inevitable that something like this would happen. Usually, it was very common and unavoidable. Even the commanders in the army chose to give up. But at this moment, a figure was rapidly approaching the little girl. It took the latter 5 or 6 seconds to cover a distance of 100 meters. "That girl, what's going on? Why didn't you stop her?" When the old mercenary saw the people who rushed out, he cursed at his subordinates angrily. "We didn't expect the young miss to be so impulsive." These mercenary groups were hired at a high price to deal with the current situation. However, the young miss of the mercenary group was also quite compassionate. She couldn't bear to see people lose their lives in vain. "Damn it, rush out and set up traps. Delay them." Li Zhongjiu saw that the young lady who rushed out had already caught the little girl. However, if they ran back, they would definitely be caught halfway. Then, the mercenaries in the fortification, who had been preparing for a long time, suddenly rushed out. This was obviously a risky move, but they all did the same. The two of them immediately threw out a few rolling traps in front of them. This rolling trap was also a very interesting thing. She heard that it was also designed by the White Deer Mansion's Design Institute. Furthermore, it was jointly launched with the Seven Stars Fire Room. Among these small rolling balls, there were also some traps that could be triggered. Once touched, a huge net would instantly open and trap a person or meta beast. Or hundreds of steel needles would burst out in an instant, turning you into a hedgehog. Other than that, the rolling trap came in many different styles. Just as he threw it out, the two monsters had already charged forward. There were 7 or 8 of them. Only 3 of them fell into the trap. With a stomp of their feet, a net of poisonous thorns and thorns appeared and trapped the 3 tomb monsters. At the same time, the tomb monster fell to the ground. However, the other 4 leaped forward and continued to attack the mercenaries. This was Li Zhongjiu's first time seeing these tomb monsters. At a glance, their skin color and overall color appeared to be gray. Moreover, their bodies emitted a rotting smell that caused one to feel nauseous. At the same time, they appeared as if they had not bathed for a very long time, as a thick layer of dust had accumulated on their bodies. They had a huge head, 4 hands and 2 legs. They looked like giant ants that stood up. There were no eyes on their faces, only 2 pores and a mouth. Their mouths were wide open. Their mouths were filled with sharp teeth. They were densely packed. Just by looking at them, one could already feel their sharp aura. If one was bitten, even if one's body was made of iron, it would still be bitten off. The remaining 4 rushed toward the mercenaries from the left and right, as if they were attacking from both sides. As for the oldest mercenary, he remained calm and composed. He held a huge sword with both hands. Fight! Boom! Boom! Immediately, these mercenaries released their elemental energy one after another. Yuan King Elite. If they did not use their Yuan King level Yuan Qi, they would not be able to hurt these tomb monsters. However, once you unleashed the aura of a Yuan Monarch, these tomb monsters would chase after you. They were so close. Even if these tomb monsters reacted, it would be too late. After all, they were still smart. He raised his huge sword with both hands and slashed it forward. Suddenly, a terrifying sword aura slashed one of the tomb monsters to the ground. The latter rolled a few times on the ground, and a large wound appeared on its stomach. Countless internal organs mixed with liquid flowed out of the wound. Naturally, it was quite disgusting. Bang! 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 The remaining 3 tomb monsters were quickly taken down as well. The mercenaries' cooperation could be said to be quite perfect. After the mercenaries killed the tomb monsters in front of them, they quickly wanted to retreat. Not good. However, just as they were retreating, a powerful aura had already locked onto them. Even among the tomb monsters, there were strong and weak ones. The tomb monsters that they had just killed were the most ordinary ones. Now they had locked onto this one. Its strength was 10 times stronger than these monsters. You guys take little 9 and leave first. I'll hold that guy back, the old mercenary immediately said. He was quite decisive. If they did not stop this fellow, once this fellow charged into the small town behind them, it would definitely cause quite a lot of destruction. Who knew how many people would die a violent death? No, we have to leave together. However, the long-haired girl called Little 9 said stubbornly, how could she see her grandfather being killed by these tomb monsters? If they were to leave, they had to leave together. Go quickly or it'll be too late. The old mercenary roared. At this moment, a figure quickly swept over from the sky. Oh no, it's a level 4 tomb monster. This level 4 tomb monster was at least an expert at the peak of the Yuan King level to be able to resist it. The mercenaries under him were also stunned on the spot. It was as if they were directly waiting for death to come. Swoosh! Just before the level 4 tomb monster landed, the old mercenary vaguely saw a figure flash directly in front of his eyes. The opponent's speed was very fast. When he attacked, it was silent. The demeanor of an expert. An expert. There was an expert present. Bang! The tomb monster that jumped down directly turned into a pile of blood mist. Moreover, it automatically combusted. Just like that, it was burned cleanly. Li Zhongjiu's figure appeared in front of these mercenaries. Chapter 1554. The eyes of the mercenaries were full of shock. The most experience they had was dealing with level 3 monsters. The strength of these level 3 monsters was indeed very difficult to deal with, but they also had enough experience and confidence to kill them. But facing a level 4 monster, they didn't even dare to breathe. If they saw it from afar, they could only turn around immediately. Otherwise, they would only end up as the level 4 monster's food. Originally, this old mercenary, as the leader of this mercenary group, should have stepped forward bravely. He was prepared to sacrifice his own life to stop this monster in front of him. But unexpectedly, this young man, who had appeared out of nowhere, had actually killed this level 4 monster with a single slash of his sword. Who exactly was he? In addition to the shock in the old mercenary's heart, he was also thinking about the intention of the person in front of him. But at least the person in front of them wasn't here to take their lives. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to do anything. This was a very simple reason. "Thank you, sir, for saving us," the old mercenary quickly said, expressing his gratitude to Li Zhongjiu in front of him. "Are you familiar with these monsters?" Li Zhongjiu raised his hand to indicate that there was no need to be so reserved. The girl Xiaojiu also handed the little girl to her parents who were looking for her. They were very grateful to Xiaojiu and the group of mercenaries in front of them for being able to recruit the little girl. "These days we have done a little analysis and have a preliminary understanding," the old mercenary said. His words weren't too full of himself. "You are all mercenaries, right?" Li Zhongjiu glanced at the dressing of the people in front of him. Their dressing was naturally very obvious. They were all mercenaries. The so-called mercenaries were people who worked for a commission. No matter what the job was, as long as the price was right, there would be mercenaries who would accept the task. Basically, they would exchange their lives for money. If it wasn't a very difficult task, it wouldn't be worthwhile to hire mercenaries to do these things. This time, this mercenary group came here because of money. But obviously, money wasn't so easy to earn. Just in the past few days, they had been in danger several times. Even just now, they almost died. "That's right. We are the Zephyr mercenary group from Zephyr City of the Haika dynasty," the old mercenary said. Being able to name a mercenary group after this city was enough to reflect the strength of this mercenary group. "Very well, this is the deposit. Follow me to investigate the tombstone that fell from the sky," Li Zhongjiu said, and threw out a primordial stone. Supreme Great Origin stones were not that precious in the sacred martial realm. They could even be said to be very common. But in the Holy Martial Continent, not to mention the best-grade primeval stones, for these mercenary groups, even high-grade primeval stones were more than enough. And this was the down payment. After the mission was completed, perhaps the reward would be quite generous. Just thinking about it made him excited. His subordinates were also staring at him with their eyes wide open. However, the old mercenary shook his head after hearing Li Zhongjiu's words. Even if the supreme-grade primal stones in his hands were extremely tempting, all of them had to reluctantly reject him. They could risk their lives to carry out the mission, but they would not carry out these life-threatening missions. If they only searched around this town, then forget it. After all, although this mission was dangerous, at least it would not be so difficult after the withered leaves had been harvested. And these were all things that were possible. But now, he wanted them to go deep into the forest, the evil forest that existed in ancient times, to find this strange tombstone that had fallen from the sky. And it was said that there were many terrifying tomb monsters around this tombstone. No chance of survival. It was no longer a simple 9 out of 10 chance of survival. It was a real 10 out of 10 chance of survival. There was no possibility of survival at all. "I'm sorry, sir. This mission is beyond our ability. We can't accept this mission," the old mercenary also said in a deep voice. Speaking of which, the one who could not bear to refuse the mission the most was, of course, the old mercenary himself. If he could get the Supreme Great Origin stones, perhaps his brothers in this group could be saved. They would not have ended up like this. Until now they were lying in this medical hall, waiting for treatment. If the medical fees were not enough, then it was very likely that they would lose their lives because of this. They could only wait for death in this medical hall. I'll go. Xiaojiu suddenly snatched the supreme great origin stones and put them in his pocket. Sir, I'll take you there. But you have to give me 3 supreme great origin stones. Xiaojiu said firmly. Nonsense. As a mercenary, if he accepted the mission, then he must complete it. And Xiaojiu in front of him actually used such a method. It was obvious that he wanted to die in vain. If he accepted the mission, in the end, if he did not complete the mission, the consequences would be very serious. Sir, I'm very sorry. My daughter is not sensible. You should find someone else. Our mercenary group is only left with so many people. It is really difficult to complete the mission. You just need to take me to the tombstone's location. I will guarantee your safety, Li Zongjiu said with a smile. After the mission, I will give you 100 supreme great origin stones. 100. At this moment, everyone was boiling with excitement. Although they didn't say anything, their eyes were wide open. Even their breathing had become quite rapid. They couldn't wait for their boss to agree to it immediately. Leader. The old leader was also very tempted, but he was afraid that he would not be able to spend the money. Thinking that there were still brothers waiting in the city, the old leader gritted his teeth, very straightforwardly. Okay, our fierce wind mercenary group will accept this mission. But according to the rules, you have to pay half of the deposit first. Li Zongjiu understood the latter's intention, no matter if it was 55 or 5,000. For Li Zongjiu, it was not a problem at all. Okay. Li Zongjiu threw out a storage bag. This storage bag contained 50 supreme grade origin stones. Little girl, since you have accepted a supreme grade origin stone from me, then you have to help me complete a mission. Go back to your home and wait. Also, don't be so willful in the future. You are not kind, you will kill everyone around you. Li Zongjiu said to Xiaojiu. Li Zongjiu was only a 15 or 16-year-old child. Although Li Zongjiu had already experienced countless cruelties in the human world at this age, but Li Zongjiu also liked to keep the beautiful things in this world. Chapter 1555. Even the leader of the Fierce Wind Mercenary Corps did not expect Li Zongjiu to say such words and warn little Jiu. Moreover, he directly asked little Jiu to go home, which happened to coincide with his thoughts. Who exactly was this young man? Why was he so insightful? Moreover, he did not seem to care about these things. It was as if he was completely unafraid of some tricks in the world. Instead, he gave people a feeling that he was in the process of pursuing the essence of the world. Little Jiu was in a rebellious period, so he naturally did not listen to other people's words. However, for a master like Li Zongjiu, his words seemed to be the truth. He was moved, but he did not have time to express it. The leader directly stuffed the supreme grade primordial stones in his hand to little Jiu. Go to town and find Miss Feng. Ask her to bring you back to the city. Remember, don't expose these. You must not let anyone else know. The elder in front of little Jiu warned seriously. If these supreme grade primordial stones followed them into the ancient evil forest, they might just stay there and never come out again. It was better to let little Jiu take the supreme grade primordial stones away. At least it would be of some use. However, this was a huge sum of money after all. He needed to find someone he trusted to escort it. Although little Jiu was young, he had experienced many things in the mercenary corps. Therefore, under such circumstances, he was able to cope with his own situation. Little Jiu also understood the heavy burden on his shoulders. He nodded firmly. I'll wait for you in the city. After a series of instructions, he finally set off. Li Zongjiu could, of course, rely on his powerful strength to directly rush into the forest. In front of the tombstone, he could investigate. However, Li Zongjiu felt that the other party was a very smart person. Even within the forest, there was a force that was affecting his mental strength. It made it difficult for Li Zongjiu's mental strength to search in such a range. If he were to forcefully search for it, he would undoubtedly trigger this power, and it might even discover his presence. Moreover, the enemy had deliberately set up such a trap in order to guard against experts like Li Zongjiu. If they had come, they would have been able to make better preparations. This was a very intelligent person. He was using this tactic. That was why Li Zhongjiu thought that he had to find another way. He wanted to see what was going on inside. He was actually so smart. There were 9 people in the Fierce Wind mercenary group. Including Li Zhongjiu, there were 10 people. After receiving the money and accepting the task, they were quite dedicated to each other and showed their professional side. They formed a defensive formation to protect Li Zhongjiu. Even though Li Zhongjiu's display of strength was definitely far above theirs, Li Zhongjiu's. But for them this was a mission. They could not say that they would not protect him if he was strong enough. They would let him fend for himself. That was that. Sir, although you are strong, there are a few points that I have to make clear to you. After entering this forest, if I tell you to stop, you must stop. If I tell you to go, you must go. We can't hesitate at all. Otherwise we'll all lose our lives. Even if we all sacrifice ourselves, it will be difficult to save your life. Li Zhongjiu nodded in agreement. Since he had paid them to come, he had to respect what they said. And for Li Zhongjiu this would save him a lot of trouble. It was a good opportunity to see how these people would act. This mercenary group was indeed very experienced. They could also detect and predict many dangers in the forest in advance. Then he removed it directly. But the pace of progress was a little slow. Along the way, they could also see some rotting corpses. These were all people who wanted to go in to search for treasures. How could there be treasures in here? In the end, they all lost their lives. The old commander said in a deep voice. For this old commander, it was also a very regretful thing that happened in front of him. It was because it was a common occurrence that he felt regretful. If it were not for these people being too greedy, with their skills, they wouldn't have ended up like this if they had roamed the outside world for a while. The situation in front of them was all because a man's greed was like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. After becoming mercenaries, they had seen too many people who lost their lives because of greed. The group of people also suppressed their cultivation. As long as they suppressed their own strength, there was basically no problem. Although the surrounding situation was extremely gloomy. Furthermore, it also revealed a deathly message. It made them feel as if they were gradually walking towards death. But fortunately, these people were also very experienced. At least, although the surrounding environment had some impact, it was not very big. They were still determined to complete the mission. There was a slight movement in front of them. The old commander immediately raised his hand and motioned for everyone to stop. They did not continue to walk forward. They looked around vigilantly. In the east, the other party also seemed to be moving quickly. Immediately, the Fierce Wind mercenary group also rushed forward quickly. Li Zhongjiu had already seen the situation on the other side. About 100 meters away, there was a similar group of people. Looking at their dressing, they were indeed mercenaries and were walking towards them. Sure enough, after a few seconds, the two sides finally met. Isn't this the Fierce Wind City's heroic mercenary group? I thought it was those two monsters. When the other party saw that it was also a human, they were also relieved. It was a false alarm. If they were facing some monsters, they would probably only be able to fight. But now that they were facing a human, they could at least say a few words. However, people's hearts were sinister. It was inevitable that the other party would make a move in such a situation. Who knew what sort of hidden hand might appear, causing them to harm each other? Especially when the other party was the infamous Blackwater mercenary group. This group of people in front of them specialized in assassinating their opponents. Their methods were quite sinister and vicious. And they were also very famous on the continent. And these people were also quite shrewd. Even in the end, they were completely innocent. There was no evidence to prove that it was done by these people in front of them. Even so, he still had to be careful. Yo, what kind of lineup is this? Old Commander, are you also here for the Soul Stone? Chapter 1556. Soul Stone. It was a product of these tomb monsters. Someone discovered that some special tomb monsters would carry different amounts of soul stones with them. However, these soul stones also had a function that almost made people crazy. and that was to improve mental strength. Anything that could be directly used to improve mental strength, even if the effect was minimal, was still very precious. One must know how difficult it was to cultivate mental strength. The number of spirit masters was extremely small. At the very beginning of Wuxia City, Xiaoya and the others were in the hunting group. Xiaoya herself was a natural spirit master, and Li Zongjiu also helped Xiaoya. Now, Xiaoya and the others could be considered as the first batch of heroes who protected the Li family in Wuxia City. They directly enjoyed very good benefits in Wuxia City. However, the number of spirit masters was too small, except for those who had this talent. In addition, in the later stages of the spirit master's career, he would often experience mental breakdowns. If there was no correct way to control a powerful force, it would also lead to a real tragedy. However, this kind of thing was gradually decreasing now. Because of the emergence of the Tianzong Academy, there was also a special teaching and popularization in this area, so that these people could have the most basic life-saving ability. Then, you could hurry and go to the Tianzong Academy. After entering the school, you could naturally learn the correct way to master it. For those who had these special talents, the Tianzong Academy would also give special admission rights to those who had these special talents. There was no need to say much. The two groups of people met in the evil forest, and obviously, they would not be kind easily. Even if these people of the Fierce Wind mercenary group did not intend to do anything to them. But in their eyes, it was not certain. They could not trust people. The only thing they could trust was their own strength. We are not interested in the soul stones. We just want to complete a task. Blackwater, I don't think it's good for you to have a conflict in such a place. The old leader snorted coldly and immediately stared at the people in front of him. In the face of some fierce barbarians, you could not let yourself be in a weak position. Otherwise, the other party would think that you were afraid, and it would give them more opportunities to take advantage of. This was the most troublesome thing. Thus, they had to confront their opponents head-on. In a head-on confrontation, regardless of how powerful their opponents might be. When the leader of the other party heard the old regiment commander's words, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He actually dared to threaten them. However, what he said was also very true. If he were to make a move under such circumstances, indeed, it would be very troublesome. If a conflict occurred, and a large number of tomb monsters were attracted, no one would be able to escape. Even though the Blackwater mercenary group had the advantage of numbers, the Blackwater mercenary group still had the advantage of numbers. However, these Fierce Wind mercenaries were all veterans who had experienced hundreds of battles. Their strength was not to be underestimated, especially when the surrounding environment was extremely uncertain. Both of us will retreat 100 meters and find another way, the leader of the Blackwater mercenary group said. All right. This was also a solution. This was a common practice. It was not necessarily a coincidence to find the other party after 100 meters. The main reason was that both sides were evenly matched. If one side was weaker, they might be directly devoured in this forest. It wasn't impossible. Li Zongjiu did not interfere with the rules of these people. In the past, Li Zongjiu had also encountered various situations and seen many small tricks in the Jianghu. Following the 9 people of the Fierce Wind mercenary group, their figures also quickly approached in another direction. After Li Zongjiu and the others left, the people of the Blackwater mercenary group were not far away. They did not leave, and they were also looking at the direction Li Zongjiu and the others left with a rather expectant look in their eyes. Don't you think it's a coincidence that the direction they are going is the place where a level 5 monster is entrenched? The leader of the Blackwater mercenary group laughed. The reason why he was watching here was to wait for these people to fight with that level 5 monster. Perhaps there would be a chance for them to hunt down this level 5 monster. There must be a soul stone on the body of a level 5 monster. Let these people exhaust themselves first. Then they would pick up the scraps here. If they wanted to blame someone, they could only blame their bad luck for having to rush in here. It just so happened that they became a whetstone. There is a level 5 monster in front. It should be level 5. Li Zongjiu sensed and said. With a little analysis, he could know the division of the power system. According to this level, it should be level 5. These people probably did not have the strength to come into contact with a level 6 monster, or even a higher level monster. After all, if this tomb monster appeared, it would definitely start a massacre. No one could stop its sharpness. Those who had seen it probably would not be able to survive. What a level 5 monster. Was there a mistake? The few people suddenly became nervous. After all, this was not a small matter. Level 5 monsters usually carry soul stones with them, and they don't leave the forest of evil easily. They usually stay near the tombstone. Since we have encountered a level 5 monster, it means that we are very close to the tomb. However, the old leader took out a wrinkled map. No, at the beginning, the location we got, the tombstone was at least about 20 miles away. How could it appear here? The old leader was very confused. In fact, this map was very precious. It was a map that several brothers in his group risked their lives to get. It was also because of this map that the Fierce Wind mercenary group suffered a heavy blow. If not for this map, they would not have accepted Li Zhongjio's mission. Trying to find the location of the tomb in such a situation, where one's eyes were blindfolded, was basically a sure death. The only difference was whether they would die sooner or later. "Leader, it's coming." A thin man who was in charge of the lookout hurriedly transmitted his voice. As soon as he finished speaking, a huge movement came from the front. They saw a black shadow rushing through the wind. Swoosh! Li Zhongjio directly waved his hand in the direction of the black shadow, and threw out a sword energy. Bang! A muffled sound came from the forest in the distance. After that, there was no movement. The deadly threat and power that they felt just now disappeared. The pressure suddenly disappeared. What's going on? The few people were very shocked. The man who was in charge of the lookout also quickly went forward. After checking for a while, he came back with a face full of shock. It's dead. A level 5 monster was killed in an instant. Killed in an instant. It was evenly split into 2 halves. Even the soul stone in its stomach fell out. It's dead. The old leader looked at Li Zhongjio with a face full of shock. Although he knew that Li Zhongjio was very powerful, there seemed to be no limit to how powerful he was. Sir, who are you? With such powerful strength and such a young age, he was definitely not an ordinary person. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.